I got deployed again in 93, October of 93 to Mogadishu, Somalia, which was real suffering, right? Starvation used as a weapon. But the first time I had realized what it would be like without the rule of law. I've never really had a lot of thought about the consequences of doing bad things to bad people. Tuesday morning, September 11th occurs. If you're in law enforcement, you're a fireman, whatever it is, like, get down here and help out. And Lee grabs me by the arm, and he points. And it's just like when you see a large plane flying in the air like the C-5, it looks like it's not moving. Well, that's the way the Trade Center looked as it was imploding, right, on itself. There's people trapped. They're looking for every able-bodied person to come down here and remove rubble. So I'm like, yeah, two thumbs and wants to head that way, this guy. To be able to contribute to young men and women, young adults, right, making decisions, maybe nudging them back on the right path, giving them some guidance, and then putting things into place to be able to protect them. Because I'd kind of given up on humanity. I really didn't think there were a lot of good people out there. And once I started working with the kids in the school, I'm like, my goodness, like, we're going to be okay.
Rick Goodrich, welcome to the show. I've been looking forward to you as, man, I told you earlier, I said, this is like a full circle moment for me to have you sitting right here in front of me. I want to talk a little bit about you, but really this is going to be your story. And I just want to pull it out of you. I want to hear more. I know you and I have got to do a fair amount over the last 4 years, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. And maybe we'll talk about some of that. But I really want to back this up and hear. I know you've worked with the DEA, you've worked with the FBI, you've been in the military, and I want to kind of back up to where the inspiration came for you to join the military in the first place. Tell me a little about your family.
Yeah, absolutely. So born and raised in Nashville, Tennessee, right? Very different town now than it was when I was a child there. But when we talk about family, life of service, all the men of the family had served in a time of war. It was just kind of an expectation, right? Some type of service. Both my father and his brother had career Army veterans. My father turned 21 in Vietnam and 60 in Iraq, right? And my Uncle Mike served about the same length of time. Both had incredibly successful careers in the Army. My mother's brother, my Uncle Jody, had served in Vietnam, combat wounded. So there was just a reasonable expectation. My grandfather, who I'm named after, which is another like a very Tennessee thing. My dad was a junior, but I was the second. So I'll let you guys work the math on that. But I don't think it gets more Tennessee than that, right? But had also served, and so it made a lot of sense for me. Had a great childhood. Even though my parents divorced at a young age, I was 6. They were still close. It never made it weird or awkward. Neither parent remarried until I was out of the house and well on to the military service. But when you look back, right, you don't you talk about involvement in community, involvement with family, all of those things, and it just seemed natural that you always wanted to serve something bigger than yourself. As we discussed earlier, I was a marginal athlete, right, that never became more than that. And really, my plan, middle school through high school, I was like, hey, I'm going to play in college. My dad had aspired to do that. Both he and then his youngest brother, Scotty, had played college and baseball. My dad was playing baseball when he was drafted, not by the MLB, but by the Army, okay. Right? Back then, there were real consequences if your grades weren't right or you went to Vietnam. And then my Uncle Scotty played baseball at Vanderbilt, right? Successful career, engineer. He was the only member of the family that didn't serve. And then coincidentally was the most successful, What
was he doing? What business did he go into?
Engineering.
Okay.
Vanderbilt educated, both undergrad and graduate. Went to Saudi Arabia in the pre-Desert Storm and Shield in the 80s, right? worked on a hospital, a couple other projects over there. And so he served in a different capacity, right, overseas, took his young wife with him. They had their first, ready to prepare to have their first child at the time, and then came back to the States and started his own company. Very successful. All three of his children, all scholarship athletes for golf. Right, and so that's the transition. And it turns out I'm the last member of our family to have served. Everybody else seems to, when you have a child, you want them to do a little bit better. Yeah. And so I think each generation has kind of set that groundwork for that next generation. My little girl's a sophomore at Baylor, right? She's gonna hopes to serve in a different capacity. She's pre-law.
All right.
Wants to be a prosecutor. Wants to protect those that can't protect themselves, similar to her father, right? But just in a different capacity, right?
Bet.
Just as valuable, right? Just as an important part. So, you talk about, we discussed earlier, I was at a private Catholic high school in Nashville. It was the only one in Nashville, Father Ryan. Original building, it was downtown. We were across the street from Vanderbilt. We played our home home football games at Vanderbilt. Real alumni association, real sense of community. And, once football was done, I had a lot of free time, was making some bad decisions, doing some silly things. I'm glad my teenage years and my 20s were in the era before cell phone videos. We deal with a lot of issues now in my current job where students are sending nudes or sexting or anything. I guess we could have taken a Polaroid and tied it to a rock and thrown it at you and hit you or something. But didn't have that same level of accountability that today's kids do. And I'm glad they did, because I wouldn't have been able to do any of the things that I've been fortunate to do in life if I had been held to that same standard.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It was pretty clear to my family where I probably needed something just to work towards, right? To develop some maturity, some accountability. I was looking at schools, Ole Miss, a lot of kids in Nashville, especially in the private school side, gravitated to Ole Miss, Tennessee, Vanderbilt. Had a excellent teacher who was also an assistant with a basketball program at Vanderbilt, a guy named Mike Petroni. And he was taking myself and another student. He would release us from classes, and another dated reference, right? There were VHS tapes, right? And so local high school games would be done by VHS. And he would allow myself and another student to leave early and go pick up these tapes from some of the local news stations and then deliver those to, at that time, Coach Eddie Fogler over at Vanderbilt. And what I didn't understand at the time is Coach Petroni was kind of setting the pathway for me to be kind of an assistant over there if I was able to get into Vanderbilt with the basketball program. A lot of well-intentioned people, right, just trying to put the right path. But you have to be mature enough, right, to see that path sometimes, right? And, I've never shared this before, right, but I stayed on that path, and then we had a tradition in Nashville where the other oldest private school was Montgomery Bell Academy, MBA. It was all boys school, and they had these old Civil War cannons on the front of the property, all this stuff. And so we had a history of painting the cannons, right? Just letting them kind of know who the big boys on the block were. And it seems silly and ridiculous now, but in the time it was a very big deal, right? To be a senior and go over and paint those cannons. Well, we went a little too far and got in a little trouble, ended up getting suspended there towards the end. And out of pride, probably selfish pride, my family decided that I was going to withdraw from Father Ryan, which was very important to me at the time.
You're how old at this point?
17 years old. I'd turn 18 that March. So this is 17, Christmas time. And for my first time, I was put into a public school.
Okay.
They're like, you wanna get out and act like a tough guy? Let's see how tough you are. And so I was sent to a school, Glencliff High School. Public, very challenged. Public schools in Nashville at the time, very challenged.
When you say challenged, what do you mean?
Challenged as far as a lower standard, academic achievement, a lot of violent crime issues, a lot of drug issues, a lot of things like that. For the first time, I wasn't the majority. School was very diverse, both Hispanic and African American, and then adjusting to that, and then having to prove yourself. It'll harden you pretty quick. You get over there. I had nice things, right? And I learned pretty quickly that not everybody has those nice things, and sometimes they feel like they deserve those things more than you do.
Give me an example.
Winter jacket,
Yeah.
right? Anything you left in a locker was going to be gone by the time you came back. Fortunately, I was I was an athlete, right? I was big enough. I was fit enough to where I was able to defend myself. I'd kind of grew up scrapping a little bit, liked to fight, fashioned myself as somewhat of a tough guy, which is just laughable, right? Once you actually meet real tough guys, you're like, yeah, you're no tough guy. But it that helped mold me, right? That there were accountability for your actions. So went to Glencliff, and after like a rough patch, actually made some really good friends out of that. And but it was pretty clear that I needed to go into the military. And so within about 3 weeks of graduation, I was in basic training right here in San Antonio, right down the road. All the men in the family had been career Army, and they said, you can do whatever you want to do as long as it's in the Air Force. Really? Oh, yes, because they understood the quality of life, the standard of living, all the things. That was the generation, right, of Wolverines and the Cold War and communism, all the things, right? Ronald Reagan, so I really wanted to do cool guy stuff, with my friends, right? Blow things up. And so I was able to do that in the Air Force. But nothing is humbling as having to wear your name on your uniform. Mm-hmm. Nobody caring where you came from, who you are. They strip you down, strip your identity down. And another side of life that I'd never really seen before is I was in basic training with some young people that this is the best they'd ever lived.
Yeah.
Like, these are the worst days of my life. I'm like, oh my God, this is terrible. And these guys were like, man, I'm not having to worry about where I'm going to sleep tonight.
Yeah.
I know I'm getting meals. Clothing's provided. Like, this is paradise. And it really opens your perspective, right, about what life can really be like, and how oblivious I was to what suffering or what other people were having to go through, right? And that shapes you and molds you. Shortly after training, Desert Storm and Shield kicked off, right? That'd been the largest deployment of U.S. troops since Vietnam. Right? Almost 500,000 troops went to Desert Storm and Shield. And people don't talk about it now, but Iraq had finished 7 years of warfare with Iran, right, in their home. They were the fourth largest army in the world at the time and had used chemical weapons on their own people. So when we were deploying, the projections were through the roof, 80,000 to 100,000 casualties, chemical warfare, all the things, right? This is going to be a near-peer engagement. They had an Air Force. They had tanks. They had all the things, anti-air. Obviously, that wasn't the case, right? They were a paper tiger. And
what is paper tiger?
They looked tough on the resume, right? Looked the numbers, like when you stack it up, you're like, okay, this is going to be a fair fight. And then you get in the ring, and it's like their LinkedIn profile. They weren't completely honest, right? They didn't let the facts get in the way of a good story. So, that kicked off, and I was like, man, I want to be a pilot. Like, if you want to be relevant in today's military, you got to be flying something and dropping bombs. So, a lot of great programs in the military early on where you're allowed to go to school, do some, I got my private pilot's license, all those things. Was able to start taking classes at a school just outside of Nashville, Middle Tennessee State University, and was really on track for that. I got deployed again in '93, October of '93, to Mogadishu, Somalia, and it was the absolute reverse, right? When I went to Desert Storm and Shield, I only took one disposable camera. Another dated reference, right? But they used to make these 24 frame.
Yeah.
cameras, and you drop them in a box, they'd process your stuff. There were no do-overs.
Yeah.
Right? You got what you got. So you're highly selective on what you took a photo of.
Yeah.
So I'd prior deployments for guys to Somalia, there was a beach. They had some stuff going on. You would either base. They had a base in Mombasa, Kenya, and then in Cairo, Egypt, where guys were getting to I got to ride around the pyramids, start down on a camel, and then the camels bite and spit and all these things, and this guy's hitting him with a stick, and I'm like, I'm getting off the camel, I'm getting on a horse, right? And end up riding a horse around the pyramids. That's a whole other story, but the really was unprepared for what I was going to see in Somalia, which was real suffering, right? Starvation used as a weapon. But the first time I had realized what it would be like without the rule of law, without Big Brother not being there to protect those who can't. And it was a life-changing moment for me.
Give us an example of what you saw. What stood out?
This children being starved to death, right? If you've ever been in the third world, there's a smell of the third world that's unmistakable. As soon as you get off the plane, it hits you, and it's the mix of burning trash, open fire pits, right, and death.
Yes, sir.
So to see children be used as pawns, right, and then the after effects of starvation is the bloating, right, the little pot bellies on otherwise emaciated children, where you can see their bones, not just the ribs, but I mean even the chest. You only have to see that a couple of times before you know that, like, hey, this is somebody needs to do the right thing. And I'm not going to get into politics or deployments or any of that stuff. There's so many remarkable, amazing people that you and I both know that have real experience in these things. I'm just touching on not a there I was, but just what I observed and how it affected me. And
how did it affect you?
Well, it matured me. It matured me. You only have to see what hate and evil looks like. You don't. I equate it to, they talk about all these hua schools, right? You only have to be cold, wet, and hungry once to know it sucks, right? Mm. You don't have to practice misery. Mm. I don't think you have to see the consequences of unchecked evil more than once to know that if you're capable, and I don't mean just physically, I mean mentally as well, to face that on and say, I'm going to take a stand, right? And that's what it did for me. I immediately knew that I wanted to protect those that couldn't protect themselves, that between how I was raised and the supports that were in my life, I knew I was capable of protecting those that couldn't protect themselves. I never really had a lot of fear of harm to myself, right? Or even those around me, whether that's an ignorance, whether it's willful ignorance or not. I've never really had a lot of thought about the consequences of doing bad things to bad people, and it's worked out for me. And it's worked out for most of the people that raised their hand and that I served with. So when I came back from Somalia, it was very different for a short period of time, in that it just kind of reframed things, what was important to me, and I made the decision I wanted to go into law enforcement. And
you're how old now at that point?
I was 21. I was 21 when I went to Somalia. And coincidentally enough, that was around the same time that I'd met my now wife, Heather, in 1993, right? And married in 97. We've been together that entire time. I don't know how she's done. She's put up with me all that time. I can barely tolerate myself most of the time. I can't imagine having to tolerate me. But she's been with me through all of these things that we're going to talk about today, and just a real rock, like a real, very hard woman, but very loving at the same time. Her story is hers to tell, but traumatic experience, childhood, and using that to propel her for success, right? Real success in life. And and has driven her, where other people would take some of those consequences and use it as an excuse to make bad decisions or to not have success. But like I said, that's her story to tell.
Understood.
So I was able to transition to the National Guard, but full time, doing counter drug work. My dad had, through his connections, had set some things up, introduced me to some folks, and a guy, Mike Wagner, Colonel Mike Wagner. And when I say a colonel, right, I mean the distance between what I was at the time in E5 and a colonel is tremendous. And he took the time to meet with me and kind of hear what my goals were, and he put me with, at that time were the baddest of the bad, and that was these DEA agents.
Okay.
And the war on drugs. In about 1994, 1995, I was working with those guys, going to school during the daytime at MTSU. And
what is MTSU?
Middle Tennessee State University.
Got it.
The Blue Raiders.
Yeah,
Murfreesboro,
right.
Tennessee,
All right.
right? Come on now. And and then working narcotics at night.
And when you say working narcotics at night, is that undercover work?
Not necessarily for me, but yes, plainclothes, surveillance, arrest. The scale that we were working was street level.
All right.
So crack cocaine, you didn't have to know anybody to buy crack, right? You just pull down the block in certain neighborhoods, open air markets. I didn't fit the demographic for the for a user of crack cocaine, right? I had all my teeth, all the things, right? But I didn't, very savvy. Like just like the good guys learn from their mistakes, bad guys do too, right?
Yeah.
And I say bad, it's an overgeneral statement, but people that were in that business, right, on the other side, they were smart and they would adjust their tactics, and it was fantastic. That's pre cell phone, that's pre body camera, and it was real. And when I say it was real, I mean the violence was real, the consequences for not being switched on, very real. The most dangerous element,
not being ready.
Yeah, not being ready, having a bad day.
Yep.
Don't go out in the streets if you're having a bad day, because someone's going to pay for that, right? Either whoever you're dealing with or yourself.
And I'm sure you've seen that happen.
100%, right? And we can speak on some of that a little later on the DEA side, right? Sure. Where you work in that gray long enough, I think people can start to justify a lot of decisions they made. When you're talking mid-'90s street level gang and drug enforcement, it was really like us versus them. You did a lot of things to justify the means because of the level of violence on both sides. Drive-bys, gang violence, indiscriminate killing. And you had to bring that same level of intensity and anger, right, to the job. But at the end of the day, it was very much like a business. Once all the hooting and hollering and yelling and everything was done, most of these kids in inner city, right, project areas, as long as you're not disrespecting them, they're not going to disrespect you. They're going to fight you, right? They're going to do their best to survive for what they understand that existence is. But when it was all said and done, it's not like you see on the videos now where people are coming up and chirping at you, saying all the things. Whatever the opposite of that was is how you did law enforcement in the hood back then. Somebody chirped or somebody stepped up. A lot of times that was met pretty quickly with overwhelming violence, and you sent a message. Yeah. And there were rules to it, right? You didn't shoot at the police. You didn't run. If you did, there were real consequences to it. A lot of unwritten rules, right, of the streets.
Understanding.
And I'm glad I was able to do that for a while because it teaches you how to talk to people. And you need some of that seasoning. But I think people tend to forget, right? Before 9/11, it was the war on drugs. Before it was the war on terror. And if you wanted to be the baddest dude in town, it was DEA. I mean, you had Miami Vice. I mean, this guy, right? Ferrari, alligator. I know it's a dated reference, but you guys can YouTube it or Google it or whatever.
Dude, but I remember it.
But I'm like, I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
And it was a dream, and it was such a long shot, but it was a dream, and it took me almost 2 years I started applying in 1995. Was hired in 97. And then it was amazing. I say hired in 97. I apologize, because I want to be accurate. I started applying in 97. I graduated in 97. I started applying in 97 and was assigned to the New York Field Division by 2000.
New York DEA Field Division.
Yes, and so from that wisdom, right, Nashville to New York. Not sure who was making those decisions, but it was incredible. And you talk about a humbling experience, right? My wife was in banking, so New York, perfect place for her.
All right.
And it's what enabled us to be able to live in the city, in Manhattan itself. We lived on the Upper East Side, like the Jeffersons, except more like the Beverly Hillbillies maybe. But we moved from there and really didn't know anything about New York, right? When you're a new hire, they essentially just expect you to figure it out. There wasn't a paid trip to go up and do house hunting or any of that stuff. We went up. Yeah. My wife and I went up on our own. We had she had a sorority sister that was living in New York, was working PR. We went up there and slept on her floor, right, and did some a little tour. And in New York pre 9/11, very expensive town, and it cost us. My first year, I think I was making 55, 60 grand, whatever that is, in 2000. It was $2,500 for the privilege of renting an apartment.
Wow. And
then first and last month rent, and then you had to pay a broker fee. So almost 10 grand to get into a 1-bedroom, 1-bath apartment on East 75th Street between 2nd and 3rd Avenue. Al Roker lived across the street. That was the biggest deal, right? But incredibly humbling, right? Going to New York and working with all of these seasoned agents and detectives. DEA does something that's, now it's copied, but they were the original that used the task force model. So we were an even split between NYPD, New York State Police, and DEA. So just about every group had representation from all those agencies in the group, and everyone played to each other's strengths. But make no mistake, like NYPD, they were the 10,000-pound gorilla in the room. But a great legacy with DEA, real partnership, and we were really accepted as brothers up there, like real professional courtesy.
Yeah.
Right. You learn a lot really fast. It's a sink or swim. It's truly a sink or swim. And then worked. My first case was in an area in the Bronx, the boogie down they call it, right? And then Upper Manhattan, which is Washington Heights, and it was in the Monterey projects up there. And this was they called old school Puerto Rican crews that had controlled this project area. Then you had new school Dominican crews that were coming in, young guys versus old guys battling over territory, open air drug markets, right? Mm-hmm, just no different than the movies. Mm-hmm. And it was there weren't a lot of gangs like you think, like Bloods and Crips and all that stuff. It was much more like neighborhood allegiance and racial allegiance. All really right. a lot like prison, right? So we're up there, we're working, great case going on, and I'm finding my group up there. They had what they called a Cross Bronx initiative, which was a federally funded task force comprised of mostly NYPD detectives that were in the area. Newsflash for a lot of folks, I didn't necessarily blend in the South Bronx or Washington Heights, and that's okay, right? You can still make it work. Yeah. They know you're the police. They just don't know what type, right? Whether you're the drug police or if you're the whatever police, right? We all carried NYPD badges.
All right.
And there was a slight variation on it. It's in Lucite on my desk, actually, my original NYPD Drug Enforcement Task Force badge, because if you showed any other type of badge other than that, you would heat up the block, right? It was normal for regular police to be up there doing different things. But as a Fed up there, like, oh no, Feds are up here, and then that's the sentencing guidelines on the federal side are mandatory, right? And so that's a real hammer when you're dealing with criminal organizations, because you're doing 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, and there's no plea bargaining out of that. Like, this is what you get. And that's a real hammer as a Fed. And so when you talk about criminal organizations, that really scared them, because if I got you on a corner hustling heroin or crack, I'm going to hold you accountable for what your boss is doing. So what does it compel you to do? It's a business decision. Do you want to do your boss's time, or do you want to go home and see your family? That's essentially what we did. You'd catch somebody, make a proposal to them. It's not like in the movies where you're hitting them with phone books and rubber hoses and all that stuff. You're really just saying, hey, look, Skip, here's the deal. Anything more than 5 years, you need to cooperate, because here's why. Whoever's in your life is going to drift away from you. Like both your wife and your kid are probably going to be calling somebody else daddy, right? By the time you come out, their lives are going to move on. You doing less than 5, go lay down, do your time. You doing more than 5, then you need to sit down at the table, and let's make the people that are profiting off of your misery pay. That's essentially the federal model, right? I mean, that's how you do long-term cases and build them up, right? So we're working that case in the Monterey projects.
Let me ask you on that. What's the percentage, would you say, of guys that say, okay, I'm going to cooperate?
That you really put the effort into? I'd say probably 90%. It's so high. The conviction rate in the federal system, especially in Manhattan, 90 percentile. Those prosecutors in the Southern District of New York, which is the Rudy Giuliani's of the world, right? That's where he got his start. James Comey, the former head of the FBI, that's where he was at. Just amazing prosecutors, right? And they were feared.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't the guys with the guns. It was the guys with the pen and paper that were feared. And they were fearless. You know, they weren't afraid to lose a case. We'd get after it. And these conspiracy cases, right? So in a conspiracy case or some type of continuous criminal enterprise or RICO statute, made famous by the Italian mafia prosecutions, right? We were using those same models for these drug distribution networks, where just because you're a person who's keeping watch or you're doing retail drug sales on the corner, I could still hold you accountable for what whoever the honcho was that was, living on the top floor of that apartment building, kind of managing things. That's how we would infiltrate those networks. You'd flip somebody small, and then you would work them up into the leadership, right? And then you would find out how they communicated. Another dated reference, right? Pagers and payphones. Yep. Very big deal back then. And neither of those had cameras.
And just to be clear, when you say flip someone, you mean, again, for them to cooperate?
Yes, that's the term we would use is flip or turn them to Team America is what we would say. And that's very humbling, right? Because your indictment says the United States versus you. All of the resources that we possess versus you.
Just you.
That's very, it's got to be terrifying, right? So we're working those cases and we're having a good time. And then we ended up working a case that comes in from Nashville. So a couple of the agents that I'd spent time with in Nashville said, hey, we've got a girl down here that's selling ecstasy, 10,000, 15,000 pills at a time. But we've got some soldiers at Fort Campbell that got in trouble buying ecstasy.
Okay.
From her. I'm not going to say her name, and I can't believe I still remember it. My goodness, it's 26 years ago, right? But we ended up working her phone, and we found a guy, a Russian guy in New York, and found his apartment, and it was amazing. It was right across the street from this Irish bar. And so we ended up talking to these guys that run the bar, and this is in Upper East Side, over by the United Nations. And these are off the boat Irish. These guys were amazing. They were super cool. Well, they had a second story of the bar, and it's T.G. Whitney's was the name of the bar. There's no way it's still in existence, but they had a second story that was a party room. And the guy was like, hey, as long as nobody's here, you guys can use it to do your surveillance.
Okay.
And if you buy lunch while you're here or whatever, that'd be nice too.
Yeah.
And occasionally I've heard, right, that may stay over for a happy hour or something like that, right? Mm-hmm. So we're doing surveillance. We're on this second story, looking out a window, and this guy, I'll just use his first name, Sergey. Him and his sister, and she was a prostitute. We're working off of a landline and a cell phone, right? Landline, of course, a phone attached to a real phone line, not a voice over IP. So we were up on both phones and able to track what they were doing. And then a lot of fun following these guys. As you can imagine, a wholesale ecstasy dealer, most of what he was doing was patching up ecstasy, putting it in FedEx boxes and sending it all over the place. And he would meet people at these raves, which were massive at the time, these all-night parties that were ecstasy-fueled, amphetamine-fueled, electronic dance music, like these EDM festivals they have now. This was the genesis of all that.
Gotcha.
So there was a guy, Peter Gation. I'm not afraid to say his name. He was publicly convicted and deported to Canada. You don't hear that often, right? But he owned 3 or 4 clubs, a place called Tunnel, another place called Limelight. And we had an agent, I'll just use his first name, Matt, that went undercover for a long time. And Matt ended up being one of the top 2 or 3 guys at DEA. Wow. But tremendous work undercover. But you can imagine he was going in the clubs. And so even though our cases weren't directly tied, they were linked. And so a lot of these cases kind of came together from where the ecstasy was coming from. All of this was coming in from Northern Europe, the Netherlands, and 2 different ways, coming in by commercial flights where they were paying stewardesses to bring them over. And it was an Egyptian male that was controlling these, and it gets interesting in a minute. And they were bringing over 10, 15,000 pills at a time in flowers, like just in the vase, or however you would transport. I don't know what the technical term is. And then there were the same way they were smuggling diamonds into New York. These Hasidic Orthodox Jewish community was bringing in ecstasy at about 100,000 pills at a time. And these they made these special tables that you cut diamonds on. Well, what was special about them is they could hold about 100,000 pills of ecstasy, right? I'm sure they're highly efficient at cutting diamonds as well, but this is what they were using them for. So it was a crazy cast of characters that kind of came together. We had an Egyptian, we had an Israeli, we had a Russian, and then we had a guy that was of Romanian descent that was kind of like what they would consider in Europe a gypsy, like literally. And they were all in this together, all kind of doing their own things, heavily involved in prostitution as well. Sergei, our Russian, he was heavily involved in Asian prostitution, of all the things. He would meet these girls at these hostess bars and then flip them, turn them, and another way to flip somebody, right?
Yeah.
Getting them to do what he wanted. Yeah. And so as you can imagine, those phone conversations were entertaining we were listening to. So we're in the middle of this case, and then we bump into this Israeli, and he was hard to miss. He had this real flashy Corvette. And New York City, at least, is not a big car town, right? He had this flashy Corvette, customized tag. Ray Charles could follow this guy.
Yeah.
Like another dated reference. Ray Charles was blind, right? Turned out he was living in Jersey, and he was a part of a really complicated organized crime group that was involved in bid rigging on state projects in both New York and New Jersey. And the U.S. Attorney's Office in New York ended up doing a broker deal with the Manhattan DA's office. At that time, the DA was a guy named Morgenthau, very powerful long-term district attorney for Manhattan. But they had this long-term organized crime case where they were giving out commercial contracts, right, to build city buildings, municipal buildings, all this stuff, all types of bribes, very complicated, much bigger than transporting ecstasy. Like that was his job on a Tuesday, right? He was the ecstasy guy. The rest of the time he was involved in all kinds of things. But we're about to take this case down. We were targeting late September.
And how long had you been on it at this point?
Oh, I'd say now a little bit over a year.
How many of you?
Oh, in a group, about a dozen of us. But these cases, right, you have representatives from all different types of agencies. There are probably 20 of us at any given time working these things, these different cases, right?
Did it excite you coming? This originated out of Nashville since you came out of Nashville?
It was huge. It was huge because, and I'll use his name, Jeff Udell was our prosecutor. And Jeff's a big deal now in the legal community. But we did what's called a dry phone. Typically, you have to have a dirty call right? I have to have a recorded dirty call from that instrument to be able to go up on that. Apply for a Title III application to intercept your communications for 30 days. We didn't have a dirty call. So this was all done on toll analysis and all the things.
What is a toll analysis?
So just looking at their phone data, who they were calling, the frequency, and then linking that to these FedEx packages, we were able to go up on the phone. If you try to do that today, people would say you're crazy.
Okay.
But the prosecutors wrote these phones. I mean, they were just amazing. I'd love to tell you that I had some specific insight and I was brilliant. No, I just chose wisely on who the prosecutor was, right? Yeah. And so we put all that together. We get up on these phones, and this is exactly what I had dreamed. Like, this exceeded any of my expectations. I'm in New York. I'm chasing Russians, Israelis, Egyptians. We had just come off this case where we were working multiple homicides in the projects in the Bronx, like just everything you can imagine, right? And then we're putting up prosecution packages together. And so what that means is you got to take the evidence for each individual person. You present it to the prosecutor. They take a look at it. They package it up, and then we take it to grand jury, right? And the grand jury reviews it, and then you get a return on an indictment, right? They say, yes, there's enough here, 51%, right? A preponderance of the evidence exists that this person is guilty of doing this, enough to arrest them. Putting all those things together, and then Tuesday morning, September 11th occurs, right? Guys hijack the planes, fly them into the Pentagon, into the World Trade Center, all the things. So, I lived in the city. And another dated reference, I got a page from my father's wife at the time, Patty, saying, "Have you seen the news?" My wife was already at work. She had a real job, right? She had to be at work at a decent hour. And you didn't get alerts on your phone or any of that stuff back then for news. And so I turned it on, and the first tower had been hit, which is at the end of the island. But that was kind of my route that I would take to the office. And my only thought was, man, this is going to kill traffic. Because the initial reports weren't terrorist related, right? A lot of sightseeing, helicopters and planes. The Empire State Building had been hit before by a plane. I'd love to tell you I immediately went into like John Wick mode and said, this is clearly a terrorist event. Let me get all my things. And I'd been in Nashville all weekend. I'd been back for my military service, my National Guard time. And so I'd flown back Monday late. And so I didn't even have my work car. My work car was at the office.
Okay.
And so by the time I got out of the shower, the second plane had hit. And then Pentagon, everything, and then the all-call went out citywide. Like, hey, if you're in law enforcement, you're a fireman, whatever it is, like, get down here and help out. No, we didn't get that call, right? Our office got that call, and then they pushed it out. Well, they start shutting down the bridges and the tunnels, and so really you couldn't respond unless you lived in the city or you'd been in before that. And so I'd flag down. So there's different types of taxis at that time in Manhattan. You had a yellow cab, right, which you see in the movies. And then you had the Lincoln Town Cars. They call them livery taxis, right? A little bit nicer, a little bit more expensive, but kind of worth it, right? And so I see one flying down there. And so I've got my gun. I've got my vest in my hand. Like, I don't have my vest on. I'm just carrying my stuff because I just assume it's going to be a long day, right? Flag this guy down. I get in the car. He's like, where to? I said, I need you at 99 10th Avenue. That's where our office was, which is the Lower West Side where Chelsea Market, Chelsea Piers is. That's where they film Law and Order.
All right.
Down there. Oprah had the Oxygen Network down there. The Food Network's right there. Beautiful place. Said, I need you to get me down there. He was able to get me fairly close. They started locking down.
And it's just you.
Just me.
At this point.
Just me. Wife's at work. I'm able to communicate with her. They're still trying to figure out. She was in the GE building that you see right at Rockefeller Center, right? She worked for General Electric. She's in this building, right? Another great place to do an attack, right? The Iranian embassy was just across the street there at Union Station, all the things. So they were trying to figure out what they were going to do. And I had no idea what I was going to do, right? And so I get down there and I'm walking in the garage. I was fortunate enough I got to park on the first floor. And so I'm walking there and I run into a guy, prior service Marine. He's a Marine officer. And I'll just use his first name, Lee. And I said, hey, what do you think? He goes, I don't know. I said, and I'd had some medical training. I was like, well, let's go down there and help out, right? See whatever we can do. no one believed that the towers are going to fall. I'm not trying to give a false narrative like we put our capes on and charge down there. None of those things, right? We're just like, let's go help.
Do what we can.
Yeah, let's go help. 100,000 people worked in those buildings. Well, let's go down there and let's see what we can do. And of course, curiosity as well, right? So we hop in my car. We're rolling down there. It's not like the movies where they know where you're at real time or any of that stuff. Like unless you call somebody and tell them where you're at, nobody knows where you're at. And I don't even believe we called or said anything that we were going down there. We were just going. So we parked in an area, Stuyvesant High School is where we parked. There's a pedestrian bridge, and it's famous in most of the videos because that's where the media had been kind of held off at. So a lot of those videos you see where the smoke rolling up, and you'll see there's a pedestrian cross bridge there. That's where we had parked at. And we're walking towards the towers there. And just cruising along, and it's the first time in my life I had experienced auditory exclusion.
Help us understand what that means.
So we're walking, and Lee grabs me by the arm. And I just instinctively, he grabs me, I stop. Like, this is the guy, he's really switched on, very sharp guy. Clearly he needs me to see something, right? And he points. And it's just like when you see a large plane flying in the air like the C-5, it looks like it's not moving. Well, that's the way the Trade Center looked, as it was imploding, right, on itself. And I didn't hear anything. I looked, and then everybody's running, so what do you instinctively do, right? You kind of turn and run, and then that cloud envelops you. And we had stopped and kind of took cover behind an ambulance, not knowing, it was just big, bigger than us. You hide behind it, right? All that stuff come past you. And I don't remember hearing anything during that phase, whatever that is, 15, 20, 30 seconds or whatever. And then you hear that warbling tone. And so what I learned that day is firemen have a sensor on their oxygen tank. If they sit still, once they've started taking on oxygen, if they sit still for longer than a certain period of time, and I believe it was a minute, then it starts sending off a little strobe, and it's like a woo, woo, woo. And I remember kind of having some clarity of thought and hearing that. And you couldn't see anything because that whatever that toxic cloud was, right? Cement, fiberglass, whatever it is, right? You couldn't really see a lot.
Yeah.
So these guys, they hop out of the ambulance there that we hid behind, and it was yeshiva ambulance. These guys were Israeli, and they were straight out of Central Casting, right? They had yarmulke on, they had the locks, the whole thing.
Yeah.
And they were as cool as they could be, right? Clearly, they'd experienced it before, right? And we're trying to sort things out, and they took some sterile water, and they sprayed our face down. And then he gave me a 2x4 with some tape. He's like, put this over your nose and your mouth. And we're covered, in dust head to toe. You can kind of see. And then you're trying to make sense of all of it. The dust is starting to settle now. And another, you have moments of clarity in these things, right? Traumatic events. These small pieces of paper everywhere. Because this is before we were a paperless society. Can you imagine all the documents and everything, right? So there's these small pieces of paper everywhere, and they're sticking to anything, like the trees, everything. So it looked like snow.
Yeah.
And you see people walking, you see people banged up, and you're just like, your instinct is to try and help folks. And so just on the other side of that crosswalk, where we had retreated almost back to where we had started, you hear some gunshots. And it turns out it was a plainclothes detective. And so there was a bank of about, a dozen glass doors that went into that same school, that Stuyvesant school that would go into, I believe it was a gymnasium. It was a large lobby area that I believe went into a gymnasium. I didn't go into it, so I can't speak to it with 100% certainty. Mm-hmm. But he's shooting the glass out. And so instinctually, right, you hear gunshots, you're like, okay, well, it's kicking off. Like, let's get over there. And then in NYPD, if you're a supervisor above the rank of lieutenant, you wear a white shirt. So this white shirt comes up to this guy. Either he recognized him or he could just tell that he was a plainclothes officer. He takes his gun from him. He's like, essentially, this is the wrong day to be a cowboy, or words to that effect, right? And then you look up in the response, there's 25, 30 officers there, like, ready to get some, because everybody's on edge.
Yeah.
You mill about a little bit. you don't even think about the second tower coming down. It's really like, you start kind of moving towards it. And then there was a guy there in an FBI jacket, just like in the movies, like one of those blue. Of course, he's got no dust on him or anything. And he had they call it a Watchman, a Sony Watchman. And so that's those little handheld TVs with the antenna that comes off of it, right? And you talk about those moments of clarity. He's standing on a corner, he's got this thing there. I'm like, oh, this must be some high-speed FBI communication device. Like, no, just a $100 little portable TV. And I'm like, what's going on? He's like, hey, there's a bomb that's gone off at the Pentagon. He goes, there's snipers down here shooting at first responders, and they think World Trade Center and the MX building are going to collapse. It's listing. Like, this is the most informed dude ever, right? And I had no reason not to believe everything he said. And then shortly after that,
Listing meaning leaning?
yes. So I think he even gave a specific number. I can't remember the specific number, but it was enough to where they thought it was going to collapse. So shortly after that, several NYPD guys supervisors are coming up through there like, hey, everybody, we're evacuating the area. Same thing. We think the MX building is going to collapse. And it never did. And it's, anytime you look at that area down there, it's the building that's got like a bronze half dome on top of it.
All right.
That was directly, kind of catty corner to World Trade Center 7, which eventually burned down as well. So we're down there, and then they essentially put a page out like, hey, everybody come back to the office. We're going to refit, regroup, and get all these things done. And you talk about toxic leadership, right? So the special agent in charge of the New York Field Division at the time, he was put on leave for misuse of his official vehicle.
That day?
No, this was about a month before this.
All right.
But he was on leave when this happened, suspension, right, when this happened, for the egregious act of taking his son to school in his work car. You're like, oh my God, the world's going to stop spinning, right? Now, you would think a terrorist attack, largest city in the world, largest DEA operation domestically in the United States is New York, that they're like, hey, it's probably more important to bring you back than it is for you to do this suspension because you put your son in your car.
Yeah.
No. So the number 2 guy, I'm not even going to say his name, but we have an all-hands meeting, and he comes in, and this is his words, and he fashions himself as this big-time leader. Excuse me. He says, if you guys want to go down there and pick through the rubble like a bunch of ghouls, you'll get your chance. But right now we're standing by. Excuse me.
What did he mean?
I can't pretend to tell you what I think he meant. I think he was trying to show some false bravado,
Okay.
which happens a lot with weak leaders.
Yeah.
Let me tell you how tough I am. But it left a mark, right? When you talk about a lack of leadership in a time of crisis, and kind of what people are looking for. They're looking for answers. They're looking for guidance. They're like, how are we going to contribute, right?
And when he said this, he's speaking to a crew of how many?
Easily 200 agents and task force officers kind of standing by. Most of the NYPD guys had already been pulled back to whatever their commands were because they had real leadership, right? They were going into it. The World Trade Center had been attacked in 1993, so they kind of worked through some scenarios. So they had a real plan. Then they told us, they're like, and we're still in, like, you could tell who was down there because you were covered and all this stuff. We hadn't even had a chance. Like, we thought we were coming back to get assigned to our groups, and then, I don't know, we're going to go attack some mythical being that's out there, right, that didn't exist, right? These guys were in the mountains of Afghanistan that were, or they had died in the attack. But you don't understand that. You just want to go get yours, right? You want to do whatever you can. So they sent us home, and my wife had to walk home.
How far is that?
You're talking 30 blocks, city blocks, right? But I think I think there's some healing in that too. A lot of social proofing. You're talking to other people. You're kind of hearing bits and pieces. And I was on cruise control. So I went home. They said, hey, gas up your cars. We're going to meet at Yankee Stadium the next morning. And we're going to do this, this, and this. I get home. I get gas. And then I prep all my stuff. I'm acting like I'm getting ready to go on a deployment.
Yeah.
So, I don't know what to expect. I just know that we're gonna make somebody pay, right? And so the guy who ran our group, he wasn't the supervisor, but he ran the group. His guy was they called him Frankie Streets, Frank O'Regan, just New York guy through and through, Long Island, brilliant, real street guy, Irish, but just a great dude, very good to me.
I take it his last name wasn't Streets.
No, he was Frank O'Regan. Everybody called him Frankie Streets. But Frank called everybody. He said, "Hey, listen, they can't use heavy equipment at the Trade Center. There's people trapped. They're looking for every able-bodied person to come down here and remove rubble." So I'm like, yeah, two thumbs and wants to head that way. This guy.
Yeah.
So I get in the car, we get down there, and there's a whole formal process. Like you go in, you sign in, you do all the things. They vet that you're a first responder. They give you these little red cards, and hey, wear this ID. We know who belongs. And then there's like this row of, like folding tables and people out there, and anything you could want to safely remove, like rubble, gloves, plaster buckets, hard hats, work boots, anything you can imagine, right? And then it's weird. So Sarah Jessica Parker and Harvey Keitel are standing at a corner and they're handing out cheeseburgers.
No.
Like these moments of clarity that you have, right? And so I'm there and I'm like, and Harvey Keitel did a movie where he was the bad lieutenant, right? NYPD. And that's all I could say to him. I was like, "Hey, you're the bad lieutenant." And he took it, he's prior service Marine, which I didn't know at the time. And then I did a little research later based on his response and bearing. And he genuinely wanted to participate. He genuinely wanted to contribute, but couldn't because he wasn't in some type of status as a first responder. So he's contributing however he can. A different way to serve, right? So we get out there, and we did that 2 nights in a row. And it's you can see what mankind is capable of when everybody is pulling in the same direction. Unity of command, unity of spirit and intent. It was amazing. It was amazing to see the level of work going on with this simple hands. By night 3, and then I'll kind of tie it up, but right, by night 3, we're all pretty exhausted. And I look down and I see a speedometer, like that you have in a dashboard. And I'm like, man, that's weird. How did that end up here? And the guy beside me says, "You're standing on a car." And so the destructive force of that tower coming down flattened that car no thicker than this table, right? 5-6 inches. And so once you really started to look at it, the steering wheel, the dashboard, all that stuff had been meshed into one thing. And I was like, "How did you know that?" He goes, "Well, I'm a fireman." I'm like, "Oh, from here?" He goes, "It's from Los Angeles." They had driven a group of trucks from L.A. nonstop. These guys specialized in confined space rescue, all the things. Came all the way over, didn't really have a mission for them, so they're just chipping in where they fit in, right? And I'm having a conversation with this guy, and then they had a group that had come in from France that specialized in the Alps for avalanches. So they had these real switched on dogs, and of course they're French, right? So they got to do weird stuff. But they had like these silver hats. They had to stand out, right? Every week's fashion week for these guys, right? But they had these silver helmets, right? But these guys were just warriors, and they had these dogs and this acoustic equipment, and it was amazing. The dogs would alert, and then these little guys with their silver helmet on would put their hand up, and just this wave of silence would come across. Guys would put their hands up, and it's like a kindergarten class. When the hand goes up, the mouth goes shut. Now, these are, thousands of adults. That hand would go up, and you would just hear this wave of silence. They'd cut generators, everything. And they would use the acoustic equipment to see if somebody was tapping. And that was the same night that, and I believe because it gets confusing sometimes, but that was the same night that I think the 4 were rescued. And then no one was rescued after that. then they said, we finally had a plan. FBI had set up a provisional office on the West Side Highway, the Helmsley building. They turned the parking garage into the command post. Pent Bomb was the original name of the investigation. We couldn't use FBI headquarters. They couldn't use FBI headquarters because it was a likely target, right?
Okay.
So their ability administratively and everything to come in, set up internet, computer lines, fax machines, all the things, right? And there were agents and agencies from all over the country already working by the time we got assigned over there. And what was our assignment? They threw the phone books to us. They sent 60 agents over, more or less. And they threw the phone book to us, the yellow page. It said, we need every mini storage warehouse in the tri-state area searched. Here's the photos, here's the names, and there were 21 dudes on these like the Old West, kind of like a wanted poster, right? It had their name, aliases, and photo. And so that's essentially what we did is we just went to all these mini storage places. You couldn't do a Google search.
Yeah.
They didn't have a review like this guy got 5 stars or anything like that. It was you would thumb through and you'd look at, in the yellow pages.
Any idea how many you searched? Or how many there were?
We went for a day and a half, 2 days, and then
how many of you?
at least 60 of us. And that was just the DEA piece of it, right? But through that, and I don't want to speak out of school because I don't know what's been disclosed and what hasn't, but I know at least one of the storage facilities belonged to one of those guys. All right. And they recovered some items to include a cockpit mock-up and then a cutout of the end of the island there where the World Trade Center is. That was the target. It was intentional. I know there's a million conspiracy theories, and I can only speak to what I personally know and observe. And that was the case that day. And then it just kind of tapered off. Some guys stayed on board because, believe it or not, a lot of the people that work counterterrorism, it's very analytical. A lot of computer checks, a lot of analysis. They don't really talk to a lot of human beings, right? They don't catch a lot of terrorists. They kill a lot of terrorists. And so some of our people were helping doing interviews. A lot of the money laundering system, the Hawala, that was done is done through the these markets, like they call them bodegas, right? So they'll take cash or what we would call an EBT card now. There's all kinds of little hustles that they would do, but almost all of them would sell user amounts of drugs, weed, whatever. So the FBI would develop PC, probable cause, to justify executing a warrant at these places, and a lot of times they would hit it, and if there was nothing of interest there, we would stay, and work whatever drugs were there and try and talk to these guys, flip them, see what they knew. But a lot of that was going to what we would call now the Palestinian crisis, right? Back then, Hamas and Hezbollah, but the PLO, they were very effective at fundraising in New York. Not ISIS, not Al-Qaeda. It was just pre-ISIS, not Al-Qaeda. A lot of this stuff was going to the Palestinian cause, right? So not really connected that I was aware of, and I'm no expert on it, right? I can just tell you what I observed. So we did that for maybe a week to 10 days, and then everything just kind of went back to normal. As it could, right? I mean, unless you were in law enforcement, you couldn't go below 23rd Ave unless you lived down there or you worked down there or you were in law enforcement, kind of a frozen zone. So all those things would come together, and we eventually ended up taking down that ecstasy case, and then they were like, oh, no, one of your guys is an Egyptian, and he's connected to flight attendants. And his first name was Muhammad, right? So you can't make this up. So FBI, everybody said, whoa, we can't knock this guy down. We got to vet him. We got to see what's going on. And then within 12 hours, they're like, you need to roll him up immediately. Like, we want to talk to him. We want to knock him down. And this guy was living the dream, right? He had this place in Chinatown, top floor loft, but he would host parties there, entertain models, do all these things. Like, this guy's just living his best life, right? Flight attendants from a European airline, they would regularly just stay at his place when they were delivering the ecstasy. They would party all night, do all the things, right? I mean, this guy, if you had to create a evil genius position like this guy, he's got it figured out. But he wasn't necessarily a hardened criminal, right? So we knocked him down. Turns out his parents were doctors, and
How old was he?
I want to say he was late 20s. Music promoter, all the things, and then fell into ecstasy.
Yeah.
And he had the gift of gab. He wasn't, he was a good-looking dude. Looked different, right? And that really plays in some parties, especially in Europe, right? It really played in Europe. And he was excellent at recruiting these flight attendants and putting money in their pockets, and then all that entailed, right? He was also engaged in hosting these parties, right? And then, prostitution, all the things that go along with this.
And this is the same guy that you started this case a year before on.
Yeah, on the ecstasy and everything else. It turns out he was one of the main suppliers. And so that takes us, that's right after Christmas, I think, is when we knocked that down. I remember it was freezing cold because he jumped out a window onto the fire escape like in the movies, and all he had on was a pair of boxers, right? And I just remember, I guess I could say this now, we caught him outside. We weren't in a hurry to bring him back inside.
Right.
You're going to, I'm pretty sure the statute of limitations on a civil rights violation is over, but who knows, right? So really the entire model for us shift. They formed some real visionaries. A guy named Derek Maltz, who was a supervisor with DEA, ended up being the acting administrator for a while for DEA. Brilliant guy. And then a guy named Richard Sullivan, who's now a federal judge and just a tremendous prosecutor, right? Another real visionary. They went to D.C. and said, hey, we want to make everybody work together. And the only way to do that is the power of the purse. And so they used an organization model called OCDEF, Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force. And they formed a strike force in Manhattan. And they forced FBI, DEA, ATF. At that time, it was still Customs, right? They became Homeland Security. HSI, then Homeland Security Investigations, and then at first it was BICE, Bureau of Immigration and Customs Enforcement. They combined INS, Immigration, and Customs, and they hated each other. And it's funny now. You look at Homeland Security, and nobody remembers that they were two agencies that were in a forced marriage, like kissing your cousin or something. But they really didn't care for each other. So we were put in the OCDEF strike force, multi-agency task force, NYPD, New York State Police, ATF, DEA, and FBI. Mm-hmm. We had prosecutors assigned to the building, and both the Eastern District of New York, which sat in Brooklyn, and the Southern District of New York, which sat in Manhattan, were the only two U.S. attorneys' offices that you could take a federal case to. And both of them said, if it's drugs, DEA is the lead. If it's terrorism, FBI is the lead. If it's guns, it's just guns and nothing else, ATF's the lead. Mm-hmm. Everybody's going to work together. Everybody's going to do it. And it was beautiful. And so that same supervisor, Derek Maltz, he was my boss's boss. And we had different teams within DEA. I really wanted to get more on the tactical side, like the SWAT side of it, or these regional teams. And at this time, they had these regional enforcement teams, and one was in Charlotte, another big banking area. It'd be great for my wife, closer to the South, right? And I'd done my time in New York. I'd felt like Derek did not feel that way. But, he's a lifelong New Yorker as well.
Yeah. And you've been there how long at this point?
Probably 3.5 years.
All right.
Which are like dog years up there, but at least for DEA, they really were. And so the RET program, that didn't work. I got selected for it, but New York wouldn't let me go. They said, no, he needs 5 years. But Derek felt bad, and he got me a deal where I could go to Colombia, down to Bogota to the Jungle Operations Group for a 3-month temporary assignment, which is exactly what I'd signed up for, right? I was like, that's what I wanted to do. I want to go to, strange and interesting people, meet them, and then kill them. Yeah. So, we went down. I didn't speak Spanish, really, beyond like, yo soy, ya. I didn't really speak a lot of Spanish, and so gringo as hell. But I had the military background, and so I went down there and joined the group. And we would go out, and we were hitting labs, trying to affect what most of that area in that time was in Colombia was controlled by a group called the FARC, which is the Revolutionary Armed Forces of Colombia, translated. Mm-hmm. And we're hitting all these labs, and I mean, but it's really just kind of like hitting gnats. We're not really disrupting what they're doing. It's a good time. It's a great photo op. I mean, like you're cool guy stuff. What I'd signed up for, but I'm like, well, man, we're really not accomplishing much. But I noticed that these guys, and I mean, I wasn't the first one to notice this, but I was just the first one to present it as a case. They all put their label on their cocaine, right? So whatever, the particular label that we linked to Manhattan were these, they called them a marquilla or a stamp, was a bumblebee.
Okay.
And so 6 keys of that cocaine had been seized in Manhattan in New York, right? So we went back and I pitched this to the U.S. Attorney's Office and to the office there in Bogota. At that time, the guy that ran that group was he was assigned to another agency. Sounds a lot like CIA, but he was temporarily assigned to another agency. And he went through their case officer course, all this other stuff, and he was permanently assigned up there for a 3-year period. But he knew he was coming down and taking over the Jungle Operations Group. But he had seen the information and the intelligence, the raw, unfiltered information and intelligence, and knew there was a case there.
And you had not?
No, well, he kind of introduced me to all of it.
Okay.
So he's like, all of this is here. The prosecutors end up coming back down from New York with me to Bogota. We start to break it down, and they're like, hey, there's a real case to be made here. Because what the leadership of the FARC did, at that time, they were about 18,000 strong, right? Well-armed, well-trained. They controlled about 2/3 of the cocaine cultivating area of Colombia, which is about the size of Texas.
All right.
So to put it in perspective, they controlled everything but Houston.
Okay.
Right? And like Beaumont, maybe down to Corpus Christi. And then the FARC had everything else, right? So we start to establish this case, and then so they had a program down there that the U.S. funded. Like if you were a FARC member and you wanted to leave, right, defect, or they called it demobilize, then the Colombian government had a program where you could come in and you could debrief, and if they felt like you fully cooperated, you wouldn't be held accountable for the mistakes that for the things that you did. You had to do some time in this program. They gave you some job skills, like they train you to teach you how to drive, right? You become a taxi driver. Or they'd give you a skill, like some type of carpentry skill or something like that, and you would go into it. Completely U.S. funded.
All right.
Right? Great program, but we talked to probably 200 of these folks, right? And when I say we, the investigative team, the analyst, just this amazing retired NYPD detective, guy named Francisco Garrido, Cuban by birth, forced to leave his country at 14, Peter Pan program, where he fled Cuba and went to Spain on his own. Didn't speak English, ended up arriving in the States, joined the Marine Corps. Could you imagine going to Marine boot, not speaking English, and being from Cuba right after the Cuban Missile Crisis?
What a stud.
He's a rock star. He boxed for the NYPD boxing team. He got to travel all over the world. But his real talent, he was an incredibly motivated guy, always improving himself. I never saw him without a suit on, never saw him be anything but just a complete gentleman and a professional. And but his real talent was interviews. He spent a lot of years in the Special Victims Unit. He actually consulted, right, with Law and Order. And
really?
Frank had the stories. You think I got stories? Frank had the stories, right? Just an amazing human being. And my partner, my senior partner was a guy, Dan Dyer, and he was in New York, and I was calling him, and we were going back and forth. And he had bought in on this as well. And he was a real respected agent. He had participated as a young agent in our Snowcap program, which was where we were doing offensive counter-narcotics operations in South America, right? And all that entails.
All right.
Right? But that was kind of like the instant credibility in DEA at the time. If you were a Snowcap guy, you'd felt some heat. And and that guy just got a different level of respect. And so Dan was a part of that. The guy that was running that group down there, Dante, that I was telling you about before, he was a part of that group. He lives here now locally, right? Yeah. Still serving his country, different capacity, right? But all of that kind of came together. And then these geniuses at the Southern District of New York really put this indictment together over about a year and a half, and we indicted the leadership of the FARC. 53 indictments originally.
And they're all in Colombia?
All in Colombia, all designated terrorists, right? And Alberto Gonzalez was the Attorney General at the time. It was the largest reward program, $75 million, in the history of the Department of Justice. And they were tiered based on their rank. And the FARC, they were holding three American contractors. One of them, Keith Stansel, recently told his story on the Sean Ryan Show. Yep. Tremendous dudes. Coolest thing I ever participated in, right, was being a small part of that operation, where not just those three Americans, but several high-value Colombian hostages, to include a former Colombian presidential candidate,
all right,
Ingrid Betancourt, that had been held captive and brutalized. Yeah. Rescue them without firing a shot, plus capturing their captor. And I was the case agent for alias Cesar, who had held them in captivity.
How long were they in captivity?
Over 3 years. I don't want to dishonor anybody's what they went through. I just, off the top of my head, I can't remember the exact number of days, but it's easy to put together. Yeah. But a long time, right? And brutalized, absolutely brutalized. So I had the opportunity, as to be the case agent on the Colombian end. He ended up pleading, which is unheard of, just pleading direct to the indictment, 33-year sentence. The three Americans were able to come to his sentencing. And in my office, and I think you've seen it, I've got one of the original reward posters for their rescue. And all three of those gentlemen signed it for me at Caesar's sentencing.
And those three men again were who?
Well, Keith is the only one that's publicly come out, so I'll leave it at that. It's all open source, but it's not. It's their story to tell, and my understanding is they're in the process of telling it. Right? There's going to be a hell of a movie coming out talking about this stuff. I won't have any part in it, but if I did, I hope some young handsome guy plays me. Right? That'd be awesome. But unfortunately, it's probably going to be some old bald dude. But
along with the poster, are there some glasses that are involved in this?
Yes. So once the Americans were rescued, really the war on terror was full tilt. We're talking 07, 08 at this point, right? Still a Republican presidency. And there were no cameras in our area of operation. Everybody was in Iraq, Afghanistan. We were very quietly doing some amazing things with the intelligence community and with the military, in particular, Special Operations Command, 7th Special Forces Group, 2 different SEAL teams, and then their Tier 1 components, the Colored Task Forces, right, the JSOC guys. But we had a permanent 06 level special operator assigned to the embassy there, Sean Mulholland, who ended up retiring as the commander of 7th Special Forces Group. God rest his soul, he passed away. But a real visionary. He had led a colored task force, a Tier 1 unit in Syria and northern Iraq that was responsible for some real headlines. The kill of Saddam Hussein's sons was part of Sean Mulholland's work, but just a real visionary. And he had came up with this compel strategy, which we were going to put so much heat on the FARC that it was going to compel them to come to the bargaining table, right? And we called it Task Force Little Indian. And you've seen I've got a hatchet that was given to me by CIA. That particular agent's still very active, and so I'm not going to say his name, but just a tremendous American. Because there were no chiefs involved. It was all just Joes, and we made it happen. And so that's how we came up with the Task Force Little Indian, because no chiefs. But doing some amazing things with our Colombian counterparts, like just real patriots, right? And just really, really sharp. And so we degraded their ability When I say we, the Colombians degraded their ability to communicate effectively, right? They had to go back to passing notes and couriers and all those things. And then through that, that's how we were able to leverage the rescue of the Americans. But we were also able to do a lot of targeted operations. Like, I guess the worst way you can be a multimillionaire is to have to live in a tent in the jungle, right? You can have all the money in the world if you can't spend it, right? So the real vulnerability for the FARC was they had to have people that could go into cities and buy things. They want to watch the World Cup. They want to get on the computer and Google search whatever interests them. And so they loved these French satellite phones, began, because they thought like, oh, the French, the gringos won't be able to do anything with those. Well, it was a deadly mistake, right? And so, not to get too much into the details of it, right? But we would trick those things out to where you could tell when they were being used, and able to kind of to find those areas and attempt to capture those individuals. A lot of those attempts to capture started with bombing. Triple canopy jungle. Coming in by helicopter. The guerrillas they knew the area so well, and they had their, we call them TTPs, their tactics, techniques, and procedures. If they heard helicopters, they would do all the things. If you're in the jungle, you're 30 yards away from somebody, you're not seeing them, right? So we had the Colombians had the want to be able to say, we've got to stop dropping. We're going to start dropping bombs. And so some would be programmed, right, to be able to lock in on a device when it was being used by that person that we were trying to capture. And it was to great effect. And then we would go in with our Colombian counterparts and do site exploitation, right? We were trying to recover evidence for the prosecution back in the States. And we were very successful. You asked about the glasses. That was a guy, Alfonso Cano. He was the leader of the FARC. And their version in Colombia of Time magazine is called El Tiempo, which just means the time, right? Not very creative, but very, very profitable. And so kind of the unwritten rule is kind of like, they called it like the Escobar rule or the Cali cartel rule. Like if you made the cover of El Tiempo, that means you had a shelf life of about 6 months to a year left, right? Whatever corrupt officials or country or whatever had juiced them for whatever they could get out of them. And now they were ready to be like, hey, this guy's famous. I know where he's at. And so with Cano, and both these guys are still working, so I'll just use, one's got a very distinctive last name, but we had an analyst of Colombian by birth, naturalized U.S. citizen, served in the Army, who was amazing. He's still serving in our Miami office. And then another agent, he's currently in D.C. They were the two leads on this. Amazing work with our Colombian counterparts. But they found him. They were able to kind of geo-fix where he was at, initiated a bombing campaign. Well, he was famous for these glasses because most of the guerrillas, right, that you couldn't get prescription. There wasn't a lens crafters, in the jungle, right? You didn't just roll in an hour or less, and you're popping new lenses on. So you would stand out if you had glasses or something like that, right? And so I guess my counterparts thought highly enough of me, and my contribution to that is the pair of glasses that he had on in that El Tiempo photo. They put in a little shadow box for me. It's got a section of the map that was used for the planning, and it's got photos with the Minister of Defense who ended up becoming the president, Santos, with a group of us there at the site, right, where he was killed while we were trying to capture him. Another big guy that caused a lot of harm to a lot of people, Mano Ahoy, and he was their chief of operations. And if you're Colombian and you're hearing these names, it's like me saying Mickey Mantle or like these are household names.
Yeah.
In Colombia, and we put him on the X, and I've got a beret of his, and he was such a narcissist. He had a pin with his photo on the beret. So it's not enough to have the beret on. You got to have a photo of yourself on the beret. And then we had some very successful operations. The Colombians were the lead on all of these. We were just a part of what these very patriotic people, highly trained police and soldiers were doing. We had a lot of success to the point to where the FARC came to the table, right, and negotiated a peace process. And then, not to get too political, right, but the last administration that was running our nation made some foreign policy mistakes, and a lot of those folks are free now. And it's no longer my job.
Yeah.
I know how many people were kidnapped, killed, murdered in bombings, attacks, the misery that these folks brought to the Colombian people for years. And just because a lot of that happened under a different administration, just kind of wave the wand and be like, oh no, we're no longer combating terrorism. Now we're worried about, misgendering somebody. Yeah. So, all those things. So that was, I wrote it out in Colombia until 2012. I was working with some guys at that time in the intelligence community that had served courageously in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the writing was on the wall. They were being told, hey, you need to get attorneys. You need to protect yourself. They're questioning a lot of what happened. They being the administration at the time. Interrogation techniques, capture operations, extrajudicial things that were going on in Europe where, people linked to terrorism were being snatched up. And you really saw morale plummet.
I bet.
Both in the Tier 1 units in JSOC that I had interactions with, and on the intelligence side where you had truly patriotic people that had sacrificed so much. Yeah. And now not a thank you for your service, but hey, it was great what you did and we're safer, but I don't like how you did it. And I think it's reshaped really until this current administration, how we conduct ourselves, right? You look at, I came back. So when I was leaving Colombia, my wife and daughter had to leave a little bit earlier than I did, about a year and a half. They were in Bogota with me. My daughter was 5 at the time. And they had to leave a little early because we'd had a threat within the building that I was leaving, that we were living in. And so they moved back. We had a little place over in Northwest Florida with my dad that we shared. So they were able to leave, and so my daughter could finally become a little gringa. She went to pre-K, all the things. She had the best Spanish in the house. And then, left Colombia and was, it was everything I could have hoped it was. When I was like a teenager, or even in the 90s when I was in the military, and then it was everything that I ever wanted to do with DEA. Like, I had done it. Yeah. We had a very small special team. There weren't probably 5 or 6 DEA agents in all of Colombia that were doing what we were doing. Wow. And we had a lot of respect, both from our peers within the embassy, our counterparts with the special forces and the SEAL teams. It was awesome. It was absolutely awesome. And then, going to congressional meetings and debriefing folks and all the things, and then reality hits, right? I come back, assigned to the Miami Field Division, the Fort Lauderdale office initially, and then the West Palm Beach office. And nobody cared what you'd done. You're just another new guy, new to that office at least. And so I went from, meeting with ambassadors and congressional aides and briefing the head of the DEA on kind of what we were doing, and to going out and making $100 heroin buys, really? in the Fort Lauderdale area for our domestic monitoring program. DEA has a program where they buy heroin in parts of the country that have heroin problems to test the purity and quality in the country of origin. Like, they can get into the diagnostic level to tell you what part of Colombia it came from, what part of Nigeria that it was processed in, or what hill in Afghanistan. I mean, they're just super chemists, super lab folks that can do all that work, and I'm doing them a disservice by only speaking to that. But it's a highly complicated program that's operated nationwide, and we don't arrest anybody. Like, we'll use an informant to go make a buy, or a young agent will do it to say they've done undercover, right? It doesn't take a lot of talent to buy dope, right? People do it every day. Millions of people do it every day. I don't know why we make such a big deal out of doing undercover work, but I really don't. The so I'm there, and really dissatisfied.
Yeah.
With kind of where it was with work. And it took me about a year to meet some aggressive officers that want to do some work. And we ended up doing some phones, Cuban guys that were running a trucking company, coming all the way out here to McAllen, pick up coke and bringing it all the way back to South Florida. And so that was my big case there. But I got they formed our that was the initial part of the formation of our DEA special response teams. Like DEA finally built SWAT teams. So I was able to make it through selection for that program, and then in January, Trump's inauguration, actually, of 17. We went through the course up there at AP Hill, Virginia, and some of the folks that you and I share as friends, right, that are currently serving with DEA, so I'll leave their name out. That's where I met some of them for the first time. One was still in the Atlanta Field Division, and I was in Miami at the time, right? But both of us ended up here in San Antonio working. And so that was awesome. Had a team leader that was just a tremendous human being, a gentleman named Jim Waddell. He's retired now, but there's some guys you meet that just make themselves they try to make themselves harder to kill every day. And Jim was one of those guys. Big jiu-jitsu guy. South Florida obviously is known for UFC, and I won't say the name of the martial arts or the MMA place down there, but it's in Coconut Creek. UFC did a whole series on fighters coming out of there, and here's Jim, who at the time was probably late 40s, early 50s, training with these guys, Brazilians, and all these dangerous dudes, and Jim looked dangerous. But he was our team leader, and I really started to learn the tactical maturity, what it means for, to have 13, 14 years on, kind of being the salty guy that these young agents look to because, dude, you were in New York. You were in Colombia. Like, you say stuff like, these guys listen because they want to be action guys. They don't want to be paper pushers. Yeah. They want to do what you did. Yeah. And Jim really got in my ear about that. He's like, you need to be an example. And
did you already want to move on to doing door kicking or more of that?
Oh, I loved it. It's what I was all about. I've always been an action guy. I love it, and it's followed me. I guess you sometimes you're like, damn, am I a shit magnet? I was in Somalia when everything went down there. New York for 9/11. Colombia was a really challenging time, right? Terrorist attacks. Colombia was sporty, and then you get back to Miami and real violent crime issues, right? It's weird. Nobody's from there, right? They're all from somewhere else. There's no real ownership of. Like in Texas, like the whole don't mess with Texas, like you don't see trash laying on the side of the road, right? South Florida, everything's a hustle. Nobody's from there. It's the sixth borough of New York, parts of it, But it's a lot of guys that, want to drive a Corvette and live in their mom's basement. It's all false bravado, right? And then you got the other side of it where you got these kids that are, survived Haiti and now they're on the streets and they see this dude driving the Corvette. Well, they don't know he lives in mom's basement. Right. They're like, how do I get what he has? Yeah. And if you've been raised where it's dog eat dog, the guy with the gun makes the rules. And so it was hyper violent. The good news was they really couldn't shoot for shit. And that's the difference between South Florida and Texas. Like they would break into cars there and they would steal like a high point or some poorly made gun, where here in Texas, you break into a car, you're stealing a staccato or you're stealing a Glock, right? And they grew up hunting, right? So although there was more violence in South Florida, Texas was more dangerous, right? So, but I got to do the SRT program there in Miami and
define SRT.
Special response team, right? And so for the Miami Field Division, which was the entire state of Florida, but we really only worked like from Tampa down, hitting a lot of doors, at least, we were training twice a month and then, probably hitting a house once a month. So it really gave me purpose again. because I wasn't really happy or satisfied with the work I was doing as an agent.
Yeah.
Because the cases weren't there. The South Florida of the 90s was done. All that dope was coming across the U.S.-Mexican border. Right.
Now for you, so you're moving into SRT. Uh-huh. So before that, what were you considered? What group were you considered?
We were just a regular enforcement group.
Okay.
And I'm not going to say the name of the group, and I'm not being overly negative, but
Understood.
It was a lot of guys that had done different things in their career, and they were just kind of, South Florida was just kind of, you were either retired in place or you were a brand new agent.
All right.
But the brand new agents were in the Miami office. I was in the West Palm Beach office, which is out of our window in our new office, you could see Mar-a-Lago. When I say it was beautiful,
wow.
I mean, it's just amazing. But that wasn't necessarily attractive to a young, aggressive agent. So with the SRT program, even though I was assigned to West Palm, I'm working with all these young, aggressive Miami agents. Tremendous, just all about it.
Yeah.
Want to get out, get it done. And it was
love
good.
That?
I absolutely loved it. Loved it.
Yeah.
My last day, right, was a hit with you, right? You were with us. So I really found that, I guess, a talent of mine, because I had been exposed so much to that sensory overload, right? Just a lot of chaos. And I guess my only real talent was to kind of bring clarity out of that chaos. To be the calm guy in the gunfight. And I don't know how you get there or how you realize it, but I was really able to kind of take everything in and manage that and be able to perform, I felt like, at an above average level. There were dudes around me that were better shots. There were dudes around me that were better fighters. There were dudes around me that were bigger and stronger and had the tattoos and, looked all the central casting stuff. But I felt like I was good at it, and I was respected, right? And that's really what you want, right? You work toward is the respect and admiration of your peers. So we're doing all that, and then my old boss in Bogota, Dante, was running this region here for DEA, and he had reached out, and I had attempted to promote a couple of times. I'd had an internal investigation that it ended up being unfounded. But when these investigations take like a year or 2 years, you're not eligible for promotion. So I kind of missed my window, and I got comfortable, and anybody that knew me knew that it was BS. And so when it came time to be able to help me, several people did. Several people raised their hand and said, "Hey, brother, you still want to promote? I got this, this, and this." And I had 2 or 3 opportunities at the time. And it really kind of takes you back to, if you really try and do right by everybody that will allow you to, it always comes back around. It's a roller coaster, right? Peaks and valleys in life. And a lot of times when you're at your lowest moment, that person that you helped when they were in their lowest moment, they're one of the first ones to throw their hand out to you. Yeah. Hey, man, I've got this over here. I got this, I got that. And so Dante had reached out, and he was really trying to change the narrative here in the San Antonio district, which includes Waco all the way down to Eagle Pass. Massive, right? And he was the senior DEA agent for that entire area.
And when you say change it, are you about to get into that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So he was just trying to change. He wanted to bring some outside guys in. And he wanted dudes that had worked with him either in Colombia or in other offices.
All right.
Guys that he knew that had felt some heat.
Yep.
Right? Weren't afraid to take a calculated risk. And I don't want to undersell calculated risk, right? A lot of the work you do when you're talking about transnational criminal organizations, right? Organizations that have immense resources, they operate across borders, and they don't have any rules. You find yourself doing a lot of gray area things. And when I say gray area, it's not everything is black and white. It might be, it's just like the fight in terrorism, right? Where the enemy of my enemy is my friend a lot of times. A lot of time you find yourself in Colombia or in Miami or in Texas, that information that you're getting might be from somebody that's as equally bad as the person they're providing information on.
Help me understand.
Well, not to be I guess to have knowledge of a criminal organization, a lot of times you're a criminal.
Okay.
How did they have access to that information? Well, it's because they were involved in that criminal organization. Or they're involved in a competing criminal organization. Mm-hmm. So these guys are like, hey, don't look at me. Look at this guy over here. Like, oh my God, he's doing all this. And a lot of times there would be some type of event that would trigger it. I won't talk about specific cases in San Antonio, but let's say like it's Christmas time and you're at the South Park Mall and a huge shootout breaks out where 3 or 4 people are injured. This isn't hypothetical. This really happened. Well, we developed sources within that organization that were as equally guilty as other members on the drug side.
All right.
But what they didn't do was take a gun to a mall at Christmas and start shooting people to rob a guy for a $40,000 Rolex that had just had diamonds put in it, right? So you make relationships with people you normally wouldn't for the greater good. Mm-hmm. And so when I say you operate in the gray area, a lot of times you are working with criminals to get criminals. It's the whole nature, really, of drug work.
Yeah.
Now, what happens is when guys blur the lines and they start to justify cutting corners because the ends justify the means. And I've worked with at least 2 agents that lost their freedom over it, right? Where either one was money motivated and had to be one of the stupidest bastards that you ever met. I mean, I never met a dude that was just screaming more to get caught. And this is an easy Google search. You can look at Miami agent indicted, money laundering, married to a Colombian gal. He hosted a birthday party on a yacht in Cartagena. Had a bunch of agents there. I wasn't there. I would have loved to have been, but I wasn't there. And nobody questioned it. Nobody questioned it. When he was in Miami, he was driving these exotic cars, and he always had an excuse. But he was a tremendous agent. This young man was agent of the year in Cartagena before he was indicted. And any crime you could commit, he was doing it. Whether he was making up informants and stealing payments, betraying Colombian counterparts, giving information to transportation crews about where the Coast Guard was going to be, you name it, he did it. And just amazing. This is a dude that I've set as close as you and I are.
Yep.
In South Florida as he was a new agent. The agent who trained him, we were in New York and Bogota together, somebody I think highly of.
Yeah.
But they were working all of these high-end money laundering investigations. You know, when they're going to Spain, staying in these five-star hotels, they all have burner phones. You start to take on that persona. And then you buy drinks. Then you buy dinner. You know, then you've got a girlfriend. Now you're paying her rent. You're doing all the things. Nobody wakes up and says, hey, I'm going to be corrupt.
Yeah.
It's like this steady slide. And I think by the time they realize they made all these mistakes, it's too late, right? And then the cover-up's worse than the lie and all the things. But, it's a shame. It's a tragedy. In DEA in the last 5 to 10 years, let's say 10 years, because I've been retired now 3.5. I can think of 3 high-profile cases and indictments, almost all of which the agent was implicated after somebody near them was shot or killed, and in the case of New Orleans, shot and killed on a warrant that wasn't real. They were going in to rip a drug dealer off, but he didn't tell the people that were with him what they were doing, and a guy took a round in the neck. I don't want to dishonor anybody's memory on that. Sir. That's the way the story was related to me. It's all well documented. When I say I don't want to misspeak about a round going to the neck but he was mortally wounded,
Yeah.
thinking he was doing the right thing, thinking he was doing the job, right? So you talk about like morality and gray area and ends justify the means, right? It's easy to lose that. And I think what Dante saw in the group of guys he wanted to bring in, he wanted people that understood how to ride that edge, but stay on the side of the law, right?
Yeah.
Dante was a fantastic shooter, a talented tactician, promoted very early, and had kind of plateaued. And so his goal was to have whatever his motivation was. His direction to us was arrest as many bad guys as you can, and we did. We got after it, and I mean,
And you got here at what year?
2017, pre-COVID.
Okay.
Pre-COVID. And then I had taken the tag over during COVID. So let's say 19 or 20.
So
Texas Anti-Gang Initiative, right? And most of the friends that we have in common worked with me at the tag. That unit was ran before by another active agent still. I'll just use his first name, Eric. Really kind of set the conditions in that group to go get it. I was a part of the Houston SRT as well. So we covered 2/3 of the state. Different than Miami in that the distance we covered, and it was just a different style of how we did things. Not pro, not negative. It was just different. Once again, I was an outsider, but now I was a supervisor, right? And so you had a lot of the legacy guys that were on the team in Houston itself that didn't really want guys from the outside kind of tell them what to do. So it took a while for me to be accepted and become a valued part of the team. And that happened, and I take a lot of pride in that, right? Really enjoyed it. But I was given a task by a supervisor that I trusted implicitly and guidance from the U.S. Attorney's Office. When politics shifted and policy from these city managers and others, especially in San Antonio and Austin, dictated police tactics to where law enforcement wasn't able to do the job to their best of their ability, use all the tactics that were at their disposal, and really limited how they went after the bad guys. We didn't have those limitations.
Yeah.
And so that initiative really shifted, in particular in San Antonio, where DEA and our task force officers became the lead effort at going after the most violent folks. Because the district attorney, who's still the current district attorney in San Antonio, they were giving bond packages to suspected murderers, right? They would put them on an ankle monitor, put them on house arrest. Well, if you're a hustler waiting on a murder trial, what can you do if you can't leave the house? Well, you can sell guns, people, or dope. So we had a very aggressive prosecutor. She and her husband are both prosecutors here in San Antonio. Unbelievable people. I'm not going to say their name. They're still currently prosecuting cases. Amazing people. But she went to a couple of our senior task force officers and said, here's the list. I want to form this violent crime task force. And all of these guys are wanted for murder. They're out still causing damage. If you can put prosecutable amounts of dope and guns on these folks, I will put them in a hole until the politics shifts. And
when you say that, you mean evidence.
Yeah, 100%, right? Develop probable cause to be able to hit the house, hit those houses. And when I say hit, execute a search warrant at that house, take those people into custody, recover evidence, and do so in a safe manner, right? And so that was the assignment. And so I didn't apologize for it. I put together a team of pipe hitters. I mean, the most aggressive people in the San Antonio field division, or the San Antonio office, district office, wanted to work in that squad. And the proudest thing, I think, or accomplishment that I had is that if you were aggressive and you wanted to go kick ass, you wanted to work with Rick.
Yeah.
And that might be the greatest compliment I've received at my time here. The narrative changes, right, once you're gone. But I took a lot of pride in that, and I led from the front. Had a very special task force officer that worked with me then, Chris Martinez, who's now a sergeant here in Shirts, just down the road. He wasn't the most senior guy, but he was the most skilled tactician, right? And so I was humble enough to say, you do the operational planning, you get it done. Work with guys like Aaron, work with some of the other agents in the group, and let's put this together. And I never dictated where they would put me in the stack, but I was almost always number one. They did the operational plan. He had the confidence in me, and then between Chris and I, we were very effective at kind of controlling the flow in the house, doing bad things to bad guys.
And when you say stack, define that. I understand, but I want everybody to understand.
So stack's just an old term, right? It's probably outdated term now, but before you breach a door, before you forcibly open a door to go into a house, you stack up in a formation to be able to flow inside the house. But also, while you're in that formation, you're covering off on all potential threat areas, like windows, second floor, all those things. It sounds very basic, but there's actually a lot that goes into it. A lot of training, a lot of preparation, a lot of gear, a lot of equipment. We were using indoor drones by the time I was done. We had changed the type of flashbang we were using within a 2-year period, probably 2 to 3 times, trying to figure out what was the best one to use to try to set the conditions for us. We were probably one of the only DEA agents or DEA groups in the country that had a dog, apprehension dog assigned to our group, and that was from the Bexar County Sheriff's Office. Nancy Sanford, who's down there, Sheriff Javi. Those folks put a lot of tools at our disposal. Mm-hmm. And it was a great joint relationship we had with Bexar County SO, because they understood the mission.
Yeah.
And, I bent some rules to do it the most effective way possible. DEA in its nature is a federal bureaucracy.
Yeah.
Right? And so the flashbangs that DEA had were really like training flashbangs. They were impact, super safe, can't hurt yourself with them, but not very effective. The beauty of having a task force is I could play to the strength of whoever had the best tools, right? And so we were using a kinetic breaching tool made out of California. It's a .45 long Colt, blank round, where that powder charge fires a piston, transfers that kinetic energy to a door, and it's nice to see. Right. But we were 100%, right? Because we were going after the most violent folks in the region. So we were using the kinetic breaching tool. We would port windows, which means if we knew what room the offender was in, we would try and break the windows and get a gun in the window, get a light on them, because that's by far the safest way to take somebody into custody, right? Use of flashbangs, a lot of stuff that really only SRT was using. We were a regular group that had a lot of SRT guys on it. SRT is a collateral duty. It's not anybody's full-time job. My understanding is they're trying to make that full-time positions now within DEA. I applaud it.
Yeah.
Real leadership at the head of DEA now. Terry Cole, he and I worked together in Columbia. All about it. This guy.
How long has he been in leadership here?
Since Trump's been in office. Right. So I mean leadership of the entire agency.
Yep.
Yeah. He was appointed by President Trump. I'm going to say 6-7 months. Dan Salter, who's the deputy, just like you would think out of Central Casting, Texan. He was a defensive lineman at UTEP. His dad was an agent, and Dan walks around. He's a big, intimidating, very smart guy.
Yeah.
But he's a guy that command respects when he comes in the room. Dan Salter donated a kidney to a stranger while he was running the Atlanta office.
Wow.
It's just the kind of human being he is. You hope to someday to meet those standards, right, of what being a human being is, like Dan does. But they got real guidance, real leadership now. We didn't have a lot of that beyond, Dante retired. We had another supervisor come in who was more worried about maybe his next job than his current job, right? But his bosses were guys that I'd worked with, and I had their respect and their trust. Some of them you had met out at the ranch, right? And I think that's how we'll close, right? We'll talk about that.
You betcha. Sounds good.
But we were getting it done. And that's when we first started using body cameras.
Okay.
Only on planned enforcement. And so those videos from those takedowns, and I can tell you of at least 3 occasions, if we had not used the improved flashbangs and the tactics that we were using, we would have had to shoot at least 3 of those folks on entry. And if I hadn't been doing it for 20 plus years and kind of felt some heat over my career, they probably would have been shot. You know, and that's 1 female and 2 male subjects.
How did that keep that from happening?
It gave them enough time to realize that we had the better hand. You know, flashbang, rip-off crews, robbery crews, they don't use flashbangs. They don't yell. Sometimes they yell police. But, like, we would come so hard that it was clear that we were going to win the day. And I think I've shared with you, we had a house, and this was with the FBI task force. And these young guys on the south side of San Antonio had set up fighting positions within the house. And we were more lucky than good on this day. Fortunately, we hit it early, and they'd had a late night. Mm-hmm. But the way the door was set up, it wasn't facing the street; it was facing the driveway. Okay. So, like a part of the house was closer to the street, then you had like a little alcove, and the door was on the side. But through that, if you were standing at the door, you were exposed to 2 sets of windows. Well, on the other side of those windows, these guys had set up little fighting positions. They had semi-automatic and fully automatic weapons set up on these bunk beds. They didn't have any real ballistic protection, but they had it set up where they could go to the windows and fight, right, get in a gunfight. Fortunately, we were able to get in the house quick enough, and we'd used a flashbang. But there was a young man. It turned out he was a juvenile, and I'm fortunate. This is one of my last warrants. But I'd already taken the safety selector off of my rifle as he was standing in the hallway, and he was trying to seat a fully loaded extended mag on a semi-automatic rifle on a closed bolt. And I was able to tell that the magazine, he wasn't able to seat it, so I didn't have to take his life. And I mean, but that was kind of the level that I was performing at that time, where I had the clarity of thought to be able to tell that he couldn't seat the mag on the closed bolt on that AK variant.
Were you at that point, did you think, man, I'm glad this was me?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%. I don't want to put that on anybody, you know, because how's that photo published?
Yeah.
You know, it's him at his quinceañera. Well, I guess a guy wouldn't have a quinceañera, but, you know, it's him in his 8th grade graduation photo, right?
Yeah.
It's not the tatted up gangster
Right.
that's there that day holding a semi-automatic rifle in front of you. But you know, and then from the rear, and I don't know who did it, tossed a flashbang down the hallway. He dropped the gun and proned out, right? I didn't have to take his life. But when you're searching that place and you see, like, it's unsustainable pace to where we were going to lose somebody.
Yeah.
At the rate and the pace that we were going and the level of offender we were going after. Tremendous Bexar County investigator. I'll just use his first name, Brian. Everybody called him Big B. He was a case agent on most of these, and just amazing, right? His connection with, he'd worked in the jail, learned how to talk to people, developed these sources. Him and an SAPD detective, a guy named Nick, that had worked the east side for years, they had this network of informants, and so we were hitting places 2 to 3 days a week. You know the pace that we were working at. We had more arrests, right, than any other office, any other group in the country within DEA. And the numbers are there. Like, that's not hyperbole.
Can you speak to how many doors you were kicking a year on average?
Oh, I'd say we're doing 2 to 3 a week. Yeah. You know, and then there's peaks and valleys of that because we would assist a lot of other groups, and that's not SRT. That's just what we were doing at the tag, right? And the Texas Anti-Gang Initiative, that's an initiative developed by Governor Abbott who said, if I pay the rent, will you guys all house together and work together? Brilliant initiative. So SAPD, Bexar County Sheriff's Office, and then every federal agency had a group there. ATF, FBI, HSI, and DEA. We had a very large presence there. And we were kind of the, I don't know how to say it suitable for a podcast, but we were kind of the, in my opinion, the big boys on campus. People came to us. Hey, this is complicated. Can you do this? Not because we were DEA, but because of the men and women on that team. Sure. We were get it done guys. And I was smart enough to know that I wasn't the smartest guy in the room. I wasn't the most talented technician or shooter or any of those things. Pretty average dude. But the guys that I had working with me, amazing. And we're all working together, unity of effort. It was a good thing. So we're humming, right? We'd just done a warrant that morning, and we were sitting in a parking lot waiting for a local establishment to open for lunch. And I had two of my guys that were already in Hondo, task force officer and agent working on a controlled delivery. And they called, and they knew we were already out and about. And they said, "Hey, the sheriff's office, police department in Uvalde is calling for everybody. They've got an active shooter event going on, barricaded subject. They're asking for SWAT teams." So SAPD, their SWAT team deployed via helicopter. They were only able to take 4 to 5 guys down, but they hauled ass down there. It was debated back and forth for a little bit. My guys that were already there in Hondo, I told them to go. I didn't ask permission. I should have, but I told them to go. Then our guys that are in Eagle Pass and Del Rio, those young agents, well, most of them lived in Uvalde, right? And so that's who we were working on to do this controlled delivery. They'd seized a car at the border. The guy had cooperated. He said they're gonna drop the dope up in Austin somewhere, but we were gonna take it from Hondo on the way up. That's why these guys were down there that morning. So after a couple of phone calls and making the decision, and it was still going on, I took my team. We headed down to Uvalde and made pretty good time. The shooter had already been dealt with by the time we'd got there, about 15, 20 minutes. But, you pitch in where you fit in. I remember going in the command post down there. DPS was running the show at that point. Helos are still on the ground, right? They're ready to start medically evacuating these young ones. And just kind of seeing that chaos again, right? And I told you I don't have a lot of talents, but that clarity out of chaos, or just kind of having, wanting to be value added. So went into the command post. The DPS officer that was in charge had a previous relationship with DEA. We had some credibility. So there were a couple things. I'm not going to get into the details of a lot of it. I don't want to dishonor anybody's memory or second guess anybody's actions, right? And I say this a lot, and I'll talk about that post-retirement, right? But you only have to see the results of inaction, like I talked about with Somalia. You only have to see evil once, right? You only have to see that in action, or kind of, hey, if they'd had better gear or better training, this could have been avoided. And that was my takeaway from Uvalde. That's not criticizing anybody's response. I have had the privilege to speak with some of those officers that responded through the teaching that I do with the alert program.
Was that good for you?
It was, and I think it was good for them. Yeah. More importantly, right?
Yeah.
But that was a life-defining deal for me. And then, some of the younger guys that were much more involved doing the medical evacuation in particular. And there was some other stuff too, right? Information had been developed that the shooter had a girlfriend and she was going to finish the job at the high school. So we had to surge agents to the high school. Some of those guys had a hard time dealing with that because the only description was 18-year-old female. Sending those guys over already seeing what damage could be done, with a semi-automatic rifle. And they had some near misses over there. And, of course, none of that was true. They cleared the building again because they thought there were reports of a second shooter. It's all the same fog of war stuff that you have at any of these things. And I don't know how you fix that other than training and setting the conditions, right? Up front. We're always reactionary, right? We got to have a tragedy to motivate us to do things. So, we identified that some of the young guys, I'd be lying if I didn't say everybody had a hard time dealing with either the failure to get there fast enough to resolve it, or why wasn't I there, right? The whole survivor's guilt deal. Or guys that just saw, children in that state, some bleeding for over an hour, right? And then carrying them to a helicopter to try and get them medevaced out. Mm-hmm. There were a series of fences. It's a playground where they landed. There were a series of fences, and so guys had to relay passing kids over to get them to the life flight.
Yeah.
A lot of what you saw, right, that sells commercials were parents at the reunification site, not at Robb Elementary, but parents at the reunification site because they wanted answers if their child was one of the victims or not. Mm-hmm. Well, here's the realities, right? Little ones don't have driver's licenses. If the responsible adult in the room is deceased, a lot of times you don't know who these children are. A lot of those shots were close proximity to the head. So you lose a lot of those identifying characteristics, right, to be able to identify who that child is, who that victim is. And God bless those guys, the rangers and investigators that had to talk with the parents and draw DNA and link them. And then tragedy always brings out the crazy. You had people showing up down there that weren't even parents,
really?
Claiming to be a parent and all these things. I didn't have to deal with any of that. Some of my team continued going down there for 2 to 3 days to help out at the reunification center, talk to folks. That district attorney for Uvalde had been a prosecutor in this area before, knew some of our agents, mm-hmm. and had asked for them by name. But those are hard conversations to have. And you talk about life-defining moments, right? I think I brought it up a couple of times now, but that was a big one for me. My little girl at the time, she was a sophomore in high school, cheerleader, my only child. Yeah. And you start to, you want to question, right? Is the situation, are the conditions set if something kicked off at her school to not have a tragedy like this? And so you and I and some others had conversations shortly thereafter, almost immediately after, where there were several of us that were serving federal agents that had kids in the Bernie area. And so we didn't just talk about it. We did something. And organization that we both used to be with, I was a board member after the fact, but raised their hand and said, hey, not only are we going to raise money and organize training and do some things, but we want you to bring your team to the ranch, and you can bring your the critical stress debriefers. Anytime you have a critical incident in law enforcement, you got to see the doc, right? You have a critical stress debriefing. Sometimes they're en masse, sometimes they're individual, sometimes a combination of both. But they opened up the ranch, right, for 3 days. You were there, I was there, most of my leadership were there, and it was tremendous. And I'm fairly positive when you talk about that pathway to self-harm, I firmly believe that at least one of the young agents, that opportunity to go up and do that, it corrected that course. And I'm eternally grateful for that. And then, as you know, while we were there, an opportunity was brought up relating to a Gold Star family. Where the husband, who was a staff sergeant, was in Africa in Niger, and his team was ambushed while he was serving this great nation. And a lot of that was captured by a GoPro video. Mm-hmm. And 2 teenage boys, and they were putting together an opportunity for a Make-A-Wish. Now, I'm a veteran, and this kind of seeing what had happened at Uvalde, I wanted to make sure those boys were taken care of just like you guys did. And so they had things they wanted to do. One was shoot a tank, which I couldn't do, but you guys made that happen. One was train with a UFC fighter. I couldn't do that, but you and Matt Hughes made that happen. And they wanted to spend a day with law enforcement. Well, 2 thumbs that knew some guys in law enforcement, this guy. So we started talking, and brought the mom and both boys down, brought Matt out, right? Some other folks. And they got to spend the day down there. We had Border Patrol BORTAC was doing rotations with us. All the tools, just tremendous. The tactical team for the U.S. Border Patrol, just amazing dudes, real patriots, but not a real mission at the time. And they heard we were hitting a lot of doors. They're like, well, we want to hit doors too. So we brought them up, right? And they were doing a rotation up there. They brought a lot of tools to the table, but they put on a real special display for the kids, and they spent the whole day with us. And then the Good Idea Ferry, right? We were briefing for a warrant for the next day. You guys came in, and you were able to come in and listen to the briefing. It was a state search warrant on a local drug trafficker that was trafficking heroin and methamphetamine, gang related. And we just kind of decided, I decided, nobody else, just me. Everybody wanted to come out the next morning for the warrant. And so we allowed you guys to come out. You met us over on at one of the athletic facilities over there off of 410 in the parking lot. We briefed it up. And I'd built up enough trust and loyalty with my team that nobody questioned.
Yeah.
They knew that I had the best intentions, both theirs and the DEA's at heart. Not one person questioned what we were doing or why we were doing it. Almost everybody on the team's prior service. They get it. And everybody, DEA, task force officers alike, had all lost a brother or sister in the line of duty. You can't operate at the level we did without not knowing somebody who had made the ultimate sacrifice. So everybody had bought in. Not that we did a poll or I did a a vote or anything, but I made the decision and everybody fell in. So we executed that warrant that morning, and we even let the boys play dress up. They had their little vest on and everything, and it was good. And there were some photos taken of Matt Hughes and some of the team. We weren't hiding anything. We weren't embarrassed to do it. I'll be honest with you. I had no problem with it at all.
I know you didn't.
And so we're back at the office, right? And the boys are showing off the photo with Matt Hughes and some other stuff. One of the guys was wearing some country and western belt buckle for his utility belt. He was real proud of it, right? And I guess, somebody saw that and started asking questions. And they didn't call me. They called everybody else, right? And then we were getting ready to go grab a wanted fugitive in downtown San Antonio, and I came back over to brief my boss on what the plan was, because it was tricky. It was a public place, and I was 50-50 on whether we could do it safely enough. And he said, "Hey, did you take a Gold Star family out on out on a warrant. And I said, yeah, it's the guys from the ranch. And he goes, who authorized that? I said, I did. You know, I'm not going to say these things were discussed with my chain, but there were a lot of people there from my chain of command when these things were discussed. And I'll leave it at that, including the person that was asking me the question at the time. And they said, that's a problem. You know, you took civilians out on an operation. They could have gotten killed. You could have had a wreck. You know, you've exposed us to all type of liability. We're taking your group from you until we figure this out. And just, you know, may not be the brightest, but I was like, okay, well, can we discuss this op this afternoon? Because if I'm not going, it's even a bigger issue, right? And essentially just said, you're going to have to take these guys if I'm not. And of course, what's the easy out is they just canceled it. You know, they asked another agency to deal with it. Bexar County Sheriff's Office did. But that was my last warrant. Was that day. I've got zero regrets on that. Because when we circle back and we talk about that community that I live in, Little Bernie, and the work that charitable organization did, it set us up. We did a week of training. State of Texas said, mandated, you got to have a school resource officer at every school, an armed police officer at every school. So Bernie Independent School District went from 4 to 13, almost overnight. And we were able to contribute to that training. CQB, that charitable organization, brought in a breaching company and did some work all week, like just never again. So during that, the superintendent, some of the school board members, and observed what we were doing and said, we're clearly not doing enough. Now, I was still an active DEA agent at the time. This is before that warrant when we were doing that training. Yeah. And so it wasn't my intention. I knew eventually I was going to have to leave DEA by January because it was time for me to rotate to DC. My little girl was thriving, cheerleader, all the things. I wasn't going to move her.
Okay.
And I wasn't going to miss her high school time. So I knew I was leaving DEA in January. So I was obviously putting some things in motion. My intent was to go to Bernie PD, and then they were going to assign me to the FBI task force down there at the tag. I was going right back. And all that was lined up through a good friend of ours. And we do that training, and then I leave, and then within 4 days of my suspension, they create the current position I sit in now, which is the Chief of Safety and Security for the Bernie Independent School District.
How many students?
We're 11,200, 14 schools, 1,400 staff that I'm responsible for day to day. So when you talk about divine coordination, sorry about that. When you talk about how that was put in alignment for me to be able to continue to serve, but to have a position where it's fulfilling. You know, I'd never had a forward-facing job. I was somewhat anonymous in a lot of ways. You know, if I was in your living room at 6 a.m, it's probably the worst day of your life. You know, to be able to contribute to young men and women, young adults, right, making decisions, maybe nudging them back on the right path, giving them some guidance, and then putting things into place to be able to protect them. Not just the students, but the staff.
Yeah.
Right? Because there's a lot of real anxiety for teachers and everybody, that raise their hand every day and go in and do that, and they understand the risk. And it's a very different job than what I thought it would be when I took it. But to give this opportunity to be able to, because I'd kind of given up on humanity. I really didn't think there were a lot of good people out there. And once I started working with the kids in the school, I'm like, my goodness, like we're going to be okay. Yeah. And we put 4 people my first year in service academies, 4 graduates, right? Between West Point and Annapolis and the Air Force Academy. Kids going to play, college athletics at the next level, just tremendous human beings, people that put God in their life at an early age, right? So much more with a plan, with a purpose than I was at 18, right? My daughter, just amazing, her and her friends and the things they want to do, and now be a part of that. It was life-changing for me. And then through some people that I had met in my time with DEA, I was put in a position and selected to be an instructor for an organization called Alert.
Yeah.
And Alert is the standardizing organization for both the FBI, Homeland Security, and the state of Texas. 30 out of 50 states, right, say that this program is what you have to do if you're responding to a critical incident, right? An active attack event. We don't say active shooter because you can use a knife, you can use a bomb, you can use any number of things, right? And I have found that so fulfilling. We host a class in Bernie at least once a month. I'm doing 5 days the first week of January, right? January 5th through the 9th with a culminating multi-agency exercise, right? With over a dozen different agencies rehearsing how to respond to one of these things, because it's no different than being an athlete or playing an instrument or being an actor, rehearsing your lines or knowing the playbook. There's a reason why you do all those things, because when your heart rate gets around 140, you start to lose those fine motor skills, higher brain function, you get tunnel vision, all those things. But the better you condition yourself, because you're going to revert to that lowest base level of training you have, the higher that level goes. The more you sustain yourself to that chaos, the more clarity you bring to it. And the only way to do that is reality-based force-on-force training. And that's what Alert, through a grant from the state of Texas and the DOJ, brings together, right? Yeah. It's mandated in the state of Texas, right, in the wake of Uvalde, that every police officer in the state of Texas has to complete 16 hours of the training every 2 years. So we've trained about 1,000 officers in the last 2 years.
And we is?
Myself and my team from Alert. So there's about 250 active instructors with Alert.
I didn't know that.
So they bring guys from all over, and they're so impressive. I teach a lot with guys from San Marcos, just up the road, right? Austin, Houston, and San Antonio are kind of those concentrations. And then there's outliers, very impressive people. Most of the guys I teach with are, they ran their SWAT team. They are the chief of their police department. One of my favorites is a guy named Troy. I'm not going to say his last name, but he's a HPD. He's their senior sniper. And anybody that knows him knows exactly what I'm talking about. But this dude's amazing. And he's a dangerous dude. You get him on a podcast, you'll be here for 6 hours. And he'll probably end up having to shoot somebody while he's doing the podcast. I thought I was a shit magnet. Troy's done it all, but he's a talented instructor, real credibility, right? Yeah. These guys that I teach with are amazing. It's an amazing program, and I'm super humbled even they allow me to come in and contribute a little bit. And then the other side of it too, not just on the Alert side, the targets now are our churches and religious-based educational facilities, right? Yeah. You look at the numbers. They just released the numbers for 2025. For the second year in a row, the numbers have gone down from the peak, which was during COVID, right? But the numbers are increasing on attacks on churches and religious-affiliated private education facilities. Well, the grants that are out there don't cover the training for those. And then collaterally, myself and a couple of friends of mine, Bo Patton, Bo, and then Isaiah Galt, both tremendous human beings, right? We started just notionally training some of the local church security teams, and these poor guys, right? A lot of them, it varies. One of the churches has a former Gold Squadron EOD tech on it, so that's still Team 6 guy. All the way to a dude that got a gun for Christmas, when he was 12, right, and likes to shoot. But he has an engineering company. It's the full gamut of these poor guys that raise their hands at church to say, hey, we're going to defend everybody.
Yeah.
They don't have the tools or resources to do those things. And so we did a couple of them. And we had the flooding, right, the Guadalupe. Sure. And during that time was working a lot, and this time in particular, with a bunch of former SEALs. They've got a very strong community, and they communicate through a couple of deals, but one is this SEALs Future Foundation, and they have what they call FOBs, or forward operating bases. San Antonio has a FOB, Austin has a FOB, and so we were out there for several days, just trying to contribute, getting after it, searching in and around the river. And those dudes were showing up every day. Between a dozen and 20 of them, no cameras, no PR team, none of that BS. I'm confident no one got a movie deal out of it, but it's a SEAL thing. But we showed up every day and got after it, and what I learned is there's a lot of former action guys, and you can use that acronym however you want to, how it spells out. Mm-hmm. But no longer have a sense of purpose, or they don't feel valued for the skill set that they have, right? They've all retired and they moved on. They're selling real estate, or they're building houses, or they're just doing amazing things as entrepreneurs. But man, when that bell rings, they want to Roger up and come out and contribute. And so after that, I became convinced to start a non-for-profit, mm-hmm. essentially trying to bridge the gap with veterans and first responders, right? Mostly retired. Not just to give them a sense of purpose, but to protect our most vulnerable, right? To transfer that knowledge that they spent years gaining and trying to relay that to that church security team or those SROs or some group that's there that's raised their hand, mm-hmm. doesn't have the tools necessarily, but they said, hey, I'll be that guy. I'll be the sheepdog, I'll protect the flock, whatever analogy you want. And it's been really cool. And I'm definitely not going to mention a name on this one, but a former action guy, FAG, that we referred ourselves as. And there's a bunch. We were doing a class, and it was scheduled it was a Saturday morning, right? Because that's when the churches are available. That's when the schools are available. It's nights and weekends, right? So he was coming in and he was helping me out. And he shared with me, he goes, I didn't take that pill. And I didn't take that drink because I knew I had to get up and people were counting on me the next day. And he says, I hadn't had a pill or a drink in 2 months since then. And so when you talk about a collateral benefit of giving a guy purpose, you give a commander's intent, however you want to articulate it, and say, hey, here's the mission. This is kind of the concept that I'm looking at. How can we best deliver this? And so through some donations, and then in large part my wife allowing me to spend some of our money, we've been able to put together the training material mm-hmm. that's necessary to do the force-on-force training, right? And that's the Glock simunition pistols, Glock 17T. It's a blue gun, performs and acts just like the Glock, right? Except the barrel is only 6 millimeters, and it's a truncated round that fires a paint pellet. Yeah. It's laundry detergent, colored laundry detergent, right? You can't lie and say you didn't get hit, right? Not that people would, right? Not that pride gets in the way of things, right? But But to bring those tools, like they're about $1,000. You know, it's $700 a pistol. The rounds are about $1.12. They're not about, they're exactly $1.12 a round. All the safety equipment. It cost us about $1,000 per set to train one student. Now, a lot of those are one-time cost.
Yeah.
Right? But all in, you know, you work the math to train 25 students, that package is about $26,000. And then we bring in some other stuff that simulates gunfire, these shot boxes. There's tremendous stuff out there. But all in, you got to do insurance. You got to do all the things. And so the demand is there.
Yeah.
We've got the people that want the training. I've got the training teams. And so far, guys have just been doing it because they're good dudes and they see it, right? But this thing has potential for us to really deliver a lot of what's needed across the board.
Where did you come up with the name?
So all the good names are taken. No, literally one of our local non-for-profit gurus, Stacy Almagar, put us with a PhD level person, a Dr. Elizabeth Kimbrell, and she's a professor down at Texas A&M San Antonio.
Yeah.
Her and I, and then Jamie, that you know, just sat and kind of spitballed some names, and then I found the Greek word for beloved child is paidion, Paidion, and it just kind of stuck. And so that's what we went with was a paidion group. And, and it's, you're the protector of the sanctuary. And so, and AI is amazing. You type all those things in, it gives you a symbol. And even a old bald dude like me can be pretty creative with it, right? But really, Jamie's done the majority of the work. Yeah, I mean, we're full adulting right now. We've got website. I've even got a keychain that's got the QR code that goes to it. We've got hats. But like we can do donations online, all the things. And so we came up with Paidion Shield.
All right.
At the end of the day, protecting that beloved child. And real proud of it.
Yeah.
It's allowed me to interact with some folks that I normally would not. But it's also allowed me, and ultimately what my goal is, right, is one thing I didn't share when I first took the position at Boerne ISD. We contract our SROs from 3 different agencies: Kendall County Sheriff's Office, Boerne Police Department's the lion's share, and then the Fair Oaks Ranch Police Department, which is our which provides 2 officers. But there wasn't a rifle, there wasn't a trauma bag, there wasn't a ballistic shield, entry tools, there wasn't anything that was standardized.
Yeah.
And so some of those same great people that came together to take care of my team after that also helped us raise a considerable amount of money. We raised $120,000 in 3 months post-Uvalde and didn't make excuses, right? The nature of bureaucracy, 1 county and 2 cities to come to an agreement on what the rifle would be, who the lowest bidder is. Like, nah, that's BS. I said, people care. And we went out and I was overwhelmed. Brand new rifles, brand new trauma bags. And I still raise annually through a couple of different non-for-profits because I didn't have one of my own at the time. Our training ammunition. I raise about $10,000 a year to pay for bullets to train our SROs. Otherwise, they would get 50 rounds a year. They'd get to shoot once a year. Now, I don't know anybody that thinks that's acceptable because I'm asking you as a school resource officer to be a discretionary shooter in a hostage situation.
On 50 rounds a year.
On 50 rounds a year and minimal level of training, right? So I can only speak to my team, right? 4 of my 14 are on our regional SWAT team, which I take a lot of pride in. That's Boerne, Fredericksburg, and Kerrville. Not a lot of school resource officers are also on a SWAT team. We train and maintain a high standard. and people see it. We're intentional. Community very similar to here, where people aren't afraid or intimidated by weapons. They want law enforcement officers present. Our football games, we average about 7,000 folks at a football game. I'll have 10 to 12 officers on. 4 of those guys are carrying long guns. Mm-hmm. And we don't apologize for it. We don't apologize for it. To the point now where we have become an example, a standard. And so what's the collateral benefit of that? You have a company like Campus Guardian Angel, right? Indoor drones, remotely flown from an operations center in Austin, Texas. Mm-hmm. First of its kind, principle and concept, where the drones sit on a charging pad in the school. Whatever happens, whatever kicks off, whatever critical event, these drones launch within 20 seconds of that alert to find and fix that issue, to assist that SRO that's on the scene. Average law enforcement response time to a critical incident is 3 minutes. Whole lot of hate can be distributed in 3 minutes. I can tell you, not intentionally, but I was hit by a drone last January while we were training with it. Mm-hmm. Scars to prove it.
Yep.
It sucks. It will definitely sap your morale. It'll definitely help you. It change your mind, change your opinion on some things. But it's tremendous. We're going to be the first school district in the country to deploy that, and it's because of the reputation that we built. Other partnerships, some I can talk to, some I can't because of contractual obligations. But we have a lot of vendors come in and want to test their products with us because we've developed a level of credibility. And the benefit of that, or the people that benefit most from it, are not just the taxpayers, but our students and staff, right? So Spring Branch ISD in Houston, they're going to be the second. Florida really loves this drone program. Governor DeSantis out there has taken this and run. And so, I'm proud to be a small part of that and see this develop because I believe in it. I don't think any tool should be off the table. And it sucks. It sucks that we have to protect our most vulnerable with all these tools, right? It does. And it's not just the tools, it's the training. Another thing that kind of sets us apart, it's the mental health aspect. When you talk about that pathway to violence and you do the time, you take the time to study how that process occurred where that young person went from suicidal to homicidal, when that depression turned to aggression, when they decided they're going to make them pay for whatever perceived wrong that happened to them. We spend a lot of time, and all we've talked about is guns and flashbangs and blowing stuff up and there I was stories, but like our biggest achievement in Bernie ISD is throwing our arm around the counselors, the mental health officers, the psychologists and psychiatrists, the mental health services there in Hill Country area, where we work together as a team. We call it the PAC team, police and counseling team. The minute we identify a child that's been marginalized, is depressed, is making an outcry, we pump the resources to them immediately. We don't wait until they come to school the next day. And we use a lot of tools to monitor that. We work with a company called Safer Schools Together that does a lot of proactive monitoring of social media.
Okay.
We've learned, right, if you're under 25 now, there's an 80% chance that there's social media linkage before you commit that attack. So why wouldn't I use that tool?
Yeah.
It's not cheap. But I went to the community and I said, hey, I need $36,000 to pay this company to do this job. And a gentleman that I think the world of, Bryce Bodie from Hill Country Family Services, went and wrote a grant and was able to fund that program. And the collateral benefits of that are amazing. I don't provide them with a student list of names. The reason why they're expensive is because they buy the data that's actively collected on all of us that own a phone. They buy the ad data. They punch in the demographic, 18 to whatever, lives in this area. It finds their burner accounts. It does everything. And I can tell you, through that service, we prevented 2 acts of self-harm in November. So people say you can't put a price on safety. I can tell you the market, they put a hell of a price on safety. They price the hell out of it, right? And so I would love to do all the things. I'm a career federal employee. We just printed money. Now I work for a place that has to have a balanced budget, and adulting sucks. Like having to, if I buy this, I can't buy that. Like that's, who came up with these rules, right?
Yeah.
But we have to live within them. I'm able to effectively sell, at least up until now, to our community, our why and what the need is. And I think you have to get investment from individuals and buy-in, and people are always going to be more committed into something that they help create. And I think that's what we've been able to set the conditions for, is a community-based approach, where a lot of folks are intentionally involved in what we're doing, and it translates into credibility within the community as well.
You bet.
So I take a lot of pride in all those things and on that pathway to violence. And I'll say this, and all of my coworkers, especially our chief of whole child services, who I think the world of, Krista Pomeroy, who manages our counselors, our nurses, and she's really the one on the front lines on the mental health side.
Yeah.
3.5 years, my report card, right? We haven't had an act of violence, gun violence. We haven't lost a child in overdose or self-harm. 3.5 years. Amen. And I can tell you this, it's not for lack of effort.
Yeah.
We deal with an outcry at least once a week, 11,000 students. I always thought it was sunny and 75 every day in Bernie.
Yeah.
Right? Come in. It's a lot of kids hurting. There's a mental health crisis post-COVID that is unbelievable. It's these phones. It's the social media. It's this appearance that everybody's living their best life, and if you're not, you're wrong. Something's wrong with you. And it's a lie. And it was very different. If you were bullied when I was a kid, and I'm old and bald, I'm 53, right? Phone was attached to the wall, and usually you couldn't be on the phone without your parents hearing it, because you were tethered by a cord to the wall. If you were super cool, you had like a super long, you could go about 10 feet out, right? If you were baller status. But real player, right? But when you got home, you kind of escaped it. If you were getting bullied at school or on the way home from school, 9 times out of 10 you were being you were away from whatever that stressor was. Now with social media, it's constant.
Yeah.
And with all the things there, we spent a lot of time on the dangers of social media, educating parents. You just had a case here in New Braunfels, right? Person being actively recruited on roadblocks.
Yep.
And roadblocks, Minecraft, social media. These predators are out there every day trying to take advantage of our most vulnerable.
And speaking of that, for the parents that don't know about Roblox, Minecraft, what do you say to those?
Well, I'll say this. The FBI has tremendous resources that are out there. There's groups. The most popular right now is this 764. And that's the first 3 of an area code here in Texas, or a zip code here in Texas. But it spawned from this Order of the Nine Angles, which is satanically rooted in England. But essentially it's just chaos, right? And it's a pyramid scheme where I recruit you, I pose as somebody else. Like, let's say you're a marginalized 12-year-old girl whose parents are having to work late, and so, you're left to the computer to raise you, or the iPad or whatever. I make contact with you either by your social media presence or whatever. I see that you're marginalized, or even put in your bio, right, that you're alternative or goth or whatever it is, something that I can find to attempt to find common ground with you. Oh, hey, you're gender confused. I am too. Oh my God, we have so much in common. Oh, I live in the town 2 hours away from you. Oh, I know. My mom doesn't understand. Like they find that common ground. Well, the whole time this is some grown-ass man, right? Posing and doing these things. And then eventually what they do is they convince you that you're in love. And how you express that love, right, is you send me some nudes or some compromising photos. It's horrible. There's an example of a case both in San Antonio and Austin, both ended with acts of self-harm, one successful, one not. Where the individual, as a parent, the things to look for. The algorithms on Minecraft and Roblox are fairly effective. They're more effective on Instagram. They're more effective on PlayStation and Xbox to detect somebody trying to recruit you. If they request a nude or if they talk about gun violence or something, those algorithms hit and that information gets to the people that it needs to. But what these predators will do is they'll say, hey, why don't you join my private Discord channel? And then we can chat over there and we can talk about all the things, right? And I want you to meet all my friends. Oh, you're lonely? Oh, my God. Well, I'm going to invite you to my exclusive club. But this is what we do. We share nudes with each other, whatever the conditions are, right? And then once they get them compromised, most of us have in our social media profile a ton of litter out there. We used to call it a digital footprint, but footprints wash away, right? Okay. Now they call it a digital tattoo, much tougher to remove. It's out there all the time. Doesn't sound as cool, right? But it's a more apt description.
Yeah.
But most of the children are like class of 28. I'm a unicorn here at New Braunfels High, and these are the things I like to do. Well, it's not hard to figure out, right? If your photo has litter in the background where it has your mom's university, we're big Aggies, or it's got your middle school, it's easy to find your geographic location. Then they find your mom's LinkedIn profile, right, which has her work address on there, her email. They've solicited nudes, all the things, but now they pushed it too far. They want you to do something like cut yourself, their mark into you or something like that. And you're like, I'm drawing the line there. I'm not going to do that. Oh, well, that's funny. Isn't this your mom's company? This is her email address. I'm going to send all those photos to all of her coworkers, and she's going to lose her job if you don't do what I ask you to do. And this one little girl in San Antonio was forced to do some very degrading things, was forced to harm a household pet. And all of this was live streamed on on Telegram. I apologize. So when you ask what a parent can look for, there's no reason for a child to have Telegram, which is an unmonitored, end-to-end encrypted messaging application. There's really, when they talk about Discord and these private channels, being an engaged parent, like don't let them have the headphones on when they're talking and they're playing their games. It's a part of society. This right now is a part of society. Our children communicate via apps, Snapchat, all the things. It's not going to change. All right. But can you responsibly monitor that? Instagram has developed Instagram Teens. Minecraft is really cracked down. And so even in summer schools, right, they have Minecraft clubs and all these things, but it's a single server, so they can only talk to each other students, right, in that. And so there's safe ways to do all of these things. But once they recruit you, the ultimate goal of this group like 764 is to get you to commit an act of violence or self-harm. Yeah. And they have a score sheet. And there's a little manual how they teach you how to recruit and how to build them up. But the higher scores are, they'll get you on Telegram, and then they're live streaming what you're doing. And then there's people that are paying them for access to this live stream channel. And they're forcing these children to commit, a sex act or an act of humiliation. And this one, she hung the household pet with an extension cord, live streamed. They have them drink toilet water. This one particular had to drink dishwashing liquid, and she regurgitated, right? And they were like, do it again, you own her. Like, she talks about all these things, right? But mom and no one was aware in her life that this was going on until she committed an act of self-harm, and then she admitted it, and she's like, Mom, I was afraid you're going to lose your job, all the things. I'm sure that made mom feel really good, right? But when they got into the computers, they started doing this stuff. The this particular offender, he's doing almost 90 years in jail. He was convicted of having a person commit an act of self-harm successfully in Oklahoma. So and
Successful?
Yeah, successful. All of this stuff is easily researched. You can type in 764. You can type in any of these things. This stuff comes up. The other thing now is this spawning, where they recruit and convince you that just like you could respawn in Call of Duty, you can do it in real life if you believe enough. And so they have them either wear their symbol, or they'll mark their symbol into their leg. And this isn't happening in far off places. I just had a middle schooler that was wearing the spawning symbol of the person that had recruited her. And it was another classmate that recognized it and reported anonymously this was going on. And the girl didn't deny it. And the parents were, well, she's really smart and people here don't get her. And I'm like, but this anonymous person online clearly does. Yeah. Right? There was a young man in the Dallas area that has been a documented case where recruited online and into spawning and walked out into traffic and lost his life. 14 years of age. So these things are real. They're relevant. When I talked about when I first took the job in the schools, how much differently I approach things now than I did then, where really what we're dealing with is a mental health crisis.
Yeah.
And that's the approach you have to take. I mean, you need the good guy with guns, you need the deterrence, but what you really need to do is have the things in place when somebody's on that pathway to violence. Have real resources, right? Not notional. Like, I learned a long time ago, and I think I'd shared this with you. I'd lost a friend of mine to suicide, who was a super switched on military member and a police officer, but had started having to work sex crimes. And saw some horrible things. And he said he continually saw those images in his mind. And I use that analogy. If you're going to ask somebody how they're doing when you pass them in the hallway, you better damn well have the time to listen. And I didn't. And that individual smoked almost, I don't know if they sell them like this anymore, but multiple packs of cigarettes would come in a carton. He had set himself up with a chair and it had wrote about a 2-page letter. Had to have smoked, dozens of cigarettes in that time going through it. Had his phone with him. And I think if any contact had been made during that time, he would not have taken his own life. But when you talk about having regrets, right? I'm intentional now because I believe you can do more harm than good if you ask somebody how they're doing and then you don't give a shit.
Yeah. Agreed.
So it makes you somewhat emotionally detached sometimes. And it's a struggle, right? You carry a lot of guilt for a lot of different things. Whether it's a young agent you felt like you could have influenced that lost his freedom, is in jail, for 20 years. Or it's, I lost 2 friends while I was in Colombia, Terry Watson, Nick Jeter. Both American heroes, right? And celebrated accordingly. Nick was a prior service Marine, and Terry was prior service Army. Terry was stabbed to death in Bogota and had survived a helicopter crash in Afghanistan with a FAST program, right? But stabbed to death in a taxi. Nick was a Marine and a DEA pilot. And lost his life way too soon. And my wife and daughter had to take care of his wife and child in my home when Nick lost his life. And we underestimate the trauma that our families go through. The guy that guarded our building in Bogota and absolutely adored my daughter. By the time she was 3, he had shot himself in uniform on duty at the front of our building. And my daughter saw that and said that he had fell, probably was sick, had fell and had busted his head. we really underestimate the trauma that goes on. Like, I just mentioned nonchalant, like my wife and daughter had to move back to the States almost a year earlier than I did because of a threat. And I didn't think twice about it. But here I'm asking my wife to take our child and go live in a strange place that's not theirs and not think twice about it. And so as you get a little bit more gray in your beard, you start to take inventory on these things. You think about all the suffering. You think about that mom that you and I helped with the 2 teenage boys that lost their dad violently and publicly. Anything that you can do to give them a day where they don't have to think about that. That's why when I said I don't have any regret for what I did, it's because that young man smiled. And that mother said it's the first time I've seen him smile in a long time. But isn't that why we're doing it?
Yes, sir.
So, you roll it all up. My wife and daughter have lived for my career. And now I'm trying to live for theirs. Provide some stability. Financially, I've been able to do the things between my wife and I. My little girl goes to Baylor. She drives a beautiful car. She's in a sorority. She's a student senator. She's got an off-campus place. She's living her best life. You know what she doesn't have to think about or worry about? How the bills are going to get paid. Do her parents love her? I think that's the goal, right? I've done everything you can do in a career. Putting myself in harm's way. And all those men and women that did the same. That didn't get to come home. That didn't get to see their child graduate or go to prom or any of those things. I think about it a lot. So when we talk about it, we're blessed. And those things we take for granted. Don't ever be too busy to tell somebody you love them.
Yeah.
Don't ever be too busy to pick up the phone, and I'm so guilty of it. And then you get those reminders. My wife and daughter are anything a man could ever hope for. The people that I have in my support network, the people that I am privileged to work with every day. Amazing people. And for those that didn't get to do the things that I've been able to do, I try and honor their memory. And live a life of honor and integrity. And protect those that can't protect themselves, because that's what they lost their lives trying to do. And every little time you're able to do that, it honors their memory. And not some superficial bullshit. I'm not a big one to go to some ceremony or memorial and moan and complain and all those things. That stuff scares me to death. But I think a lot about how fortunate I am that my wife and daughter didn't have to go and grieve me or go to my wake. And that's the real payoff, right? So you try and give it back. You try and pay it forward a little bit. We make a lot of jokes at other people's expenses. We say things, veterans and first responders are the worst about judging what others do. The smaller the town, the bigger the chip on the shoulder. It's amazing. All these experts on YouTube, Instagram, all this stuff, criticizing all those things. I try and be intentional in my life now, not to judge and it's hard. Like, you see some tactics, you see things, and you're like, oh my God, if they'd have done this or done that, somebody would have gone home. You never know what was going through their mind at the time or what the conditions were.
Yeah.
And I think it's another part that comes with a little bit more gray in your beard. But, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come on here and kind of share some of these things. Some of these things I've never talked about. I apologize for losing my bearing a little bit, but anytime I think about what Nick missed, what Terry missed, the others along the way, all the sacrifices that people have made, I hold some solitude in thinking that I made a difference.
You're still making a difference.
Well, you try. Clearly we won the war on drugs. Like, there's no drug problem anymore.
Yeah.
I apologize. But you try. You try and affect the little things in your world. My focus now, most of it, right, is trying to prevent what really is our greatest threat to the students, which is the accidental overdose and self-harm. It's not the random teenager with the assault rifle. It's the mental health. It's the rates of depression. There hasn't been an active shooter under 25 that wasn't on depression meds. How crazy is that? How crazy is that? So I wish I had the answers. I wish I was more of a part of the solution. We're trying to find answers. We try and contribute. Obviously, I'm super chatty. I don't have a problem going to these conferences and talking about what we do wrong on things, and don't make those mistakes. I take a lot of pride in that too. Been able to share a story and to be humble with it, not talk about how cool you are, but like, hey, I made this mistake. Learn from mine.
Yeah.
Right. Hey, here's a better way to do it. This is a way. Use it as a tool. And I think I've grown a lot in that. Not having to be right. It's difficult. Right? It's difficult. Most of my arguments with my daughter is who's the most right. Clearly she is. Never won an argument. She's undefeated too on the arguments and fist fights. She's won all of them. Yeah. I've built up quite a bit of false bravado. She's 5'3", about 110 pounds. And she's a gymnast and a cheerleader and everything, but she thinks she's pretty tough. And like, there's a thing called physics, right? That's out there. But yeah, she's mentally tough. 4 months, 4 months old when I moved her to Bogota.
And she was there until she was how old?
About 5.
Yeah.
About 5.
Yeah.
And then South Florida, and then here.
You talk about why we do this. You mentioned why we do this, and you said we, and I want to just kind of piggyback on why I do this. I know there's anybody that knows me or us probably understands, but as you are probably seeing for the first time, that date that's on my wall, April 23rd of 2025, was when I started this podcast. And that was very intentional because Chad Sweden, his initials, born 11/21 of 74. He was born a month after me, and he died on 4/23 of 1995. So that's the 30-year anniversary of his death. And he killed his wife and killed himself and called me before he did it, as you know that. And I've lost 8 other friends to suicide since. And when I got raided by the task force in Amarillo, Texas, August 8th of 2002, what was on my wall?
Just to be clear, I wasn't there.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is not a part of his cooperation agreement.
Yeah.
I didn't flip him. We didn't make a deal.
Yeah. Well, thankfully, I didn't. I was one of those 10%ers, I guess.
Was it less than 5 years?
I got 7 years probation and deferred adjudication. Of course, all the things that go with that.
Right.
As you know, in Texas, you can apply for early release, and
I would have given you the same advice.
what's that?
Be in that 10%. If you're not going to be going away to sleepaway camp for 5 years,
Yeah.
just lay down, do your time.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because I knew at a moment that I was going to go to my 3rd rehab, and my place looked like a pawn shop. I mean, I'm dealing meth and coke, and I had gotten to a rock bottom moment where I had actually taken a blue can of spray paint and I spray painted on my wall, "Dying to live." And what I meant by that was I knew that after Chad's death, me starting to do drugs for 5 years straight, and he died in 95, and then 2002 is whenever that I was killing myself thinking that was life. And many people have said along the way, "Man, you ought to write a book." And I thought, man, that'd be a great title. And then when I started the podcast, I started thinking, really, to have any life, I've got to die to these selfish desires. And I still have a problem doing that sometimes, but not like it was 20-something years ago, thank God. And especially thanks to guys like you and the law enforcement that have become my friends, and the military, both active, retired, and everybody that we've ran along. And I see you bounce around from event to event to event to help wherever you can, and including things that I've invited you to. And I want you to know how much I respect you, how much I love you, how much I appreciate you, and how much good I hear about you from all of the people and more that you may not have mentioned. 2026 is just around the corner, and whatever we can do to help Paydion Shield, whatever I can do, wherever I can show up, I'm a phone call away. And more than that, I want to thank you for trusting me to come and sit with me today. And I'm looking forward to what's next in 2026 with you. And thank you for your service, and thank you for your sacrifice.
Well, that's incredibly humbling. Thank you for the kind words. I'll try and live up to them. Right.
You already do.
And I hope you get a chance to sit on the other side of the desk someday and share your story and all of the amazing things that you're doing, to include walking away from your career to focus on fundraising.
Yes, sir.
Helping those that can't help themselves, and spreading this word. And I'm incredibly proud of you. I saw what you put together in the wake of the tragedy of the floods. I was proud to be a small part of that.
Thank you.
Keep on doing amazing things. And I'm here for you. I may not be the guy that was able to go to the bar with you and then go to the concerts and do all the things. I do a lot less of that now.
Yes, sir.
But I'm still a 3 a.m. bury the body guy. I got the notches in the shovel to prove it. But it's a hell of a legacy to have, I guess, to be that phone call. But it's a pride point of mine, and I love being the guy when people run out of solutions that they can count on and call. And it's humbling as hell. May not have been the best career choice, right? In a lot of ways, but zero regrets. And it's amazing the people that you don't realize that you touch in life, right? That you've done right by them. Maybe you helped them out on that accident report or whatever it is when they've made a mistake as a young agent. Bureaucracy's undefeated. Sometimes you got to know how to dot the I and cross the T's to keep somebody from losing their job. And I'm proud to have done that from people who appreciate it and people that even don't appreciate it. They forget pretty quickly when they're in your office in tears, not having a solution on something, a mistake they made, and you make it go away. A lot of people get convenient amnesia. I had the opportunity. I was at a Christmas party about a week ago. One of the guys I used to work with that had a very high opinion of, very straight-laced guy, very black and white guy, and you need people like that in your life, right? High moral integrity. Yeah. Kind of shared something with me about his impression of me when I had arrived here in San Antonio and took over the group. And he said, I probably wouldn't want to follow anything you did administratively. He goes, but you turned the culture around tactically. Yeah. And people went home at night because of some things you put in place. Yeah. And I had never really framed it. And he goes, even now that you're gone, right? Because nobody's more popular than the backup quarterback, and everybody wants to kick somebody when they're down. Yeah. And the narrative on me when I left, they're like, oh my God, that cowboy, he was doing this and he was using the flashbangs and oh my God, and some of the background on this. They were going to come in and they were going to hammer my entire team. They were going to fly in investigators from all over because they assumed I was going to lie or not own the fact that I took these boys and you guys out to fulfill that wish. And I was at a loss. I was like, why would I do anything but own it? That was on me. When I raised my hand to lead this team, those decisions are mine and mine alone.
Yeah.
And they had threatened all of my young guys. They were going to come in and do all the things. And being a young agent, right, that seemed like a big deal to them. But I'm proud to say they only interviewed 2 people. My boss at the time and me. And it stopped with me. And they brought in Main Justice, OIG, all these things that they'd come up with, Office of Inspector General. And the Office of Personnel Responsibility, our internal affairs guy, somebody I have a high opinion of, and he was a real police officer in Nashville before he came on with DEA. And he told me not to retire. And I was just so disgusted with how that whole thing was handled.
Yeah.
How they built up this whole thing to where I was going to implicate my chain of command or I was going to say whatever. But those self-preservation instincts are very strong. And that old supervisor of mine, he talked a lot of stuff about being a Marine and integrity and all the things, carrying yourself as a man's man and all that stuff. And he didn't even talk to me before he called DC. Didn't even ask. His instinct was to protect himself on something that's not a big deal at all.
Yeah.
And I just found it disappointing. And then you know how it is. They come in, they're like, oh, man, he was using these flashbangs. We didn't even know. Or he was doing this. I was like, I was taking steps to protect our team with the mission I was given. But there's no need for all of you guys to say and do things. I'm here. I own this. I'll retire. I was retiring in 5 months. I'll put my papers in, all the things.
You're 5 months from retirement?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm fully retired.
But you were.
Yeah, 20 years. Yeah, I was leaving in January anyways. I ended up leaving in August. So whatever that is, 4 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was a mathematician.
Yeah.
But yeah, between August and January, 3 months if we're being technical, right? I guess that's the 9th month of the year, or 8th month. But he also said, he goes, Rick, nobody leaves this job the way they want to. Everybody leaves angry, and I started looking, and most of the people that I really cared about on this job, they all left angry. People that really did the job, not the bureaucrat, not the guy that was at the bar, handing out DEA cards, but the guys that were really in the weeds, really doing the job. None of them left happy. And I think that's the nature of bureaucracy, is they tell you they want you to go out and we do all these things, right? And they want you to be aggressive and all that other stuff. Well, that scares people. It scares pencil pushers, right? Or people that are more worried about their next job, career climber, versus their current job. It scares people.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy to say, hey, don't look at me. Look at this guy.
Yeah.
Don't look over here. Look what's in this hand. And it's disappointing. And that's when I say, like, this is the most fulfilling job I've had, kind of serving the community and serving the public, right? Is that it's very transparent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, hey, the mission, protect the kids. There's not a lot of gray area.
Yeah.
In that one. And man, it's, I wish I'd done it before I had this hair loss. Right? Who knows? I might have some flowing locks like Fabio or something. But brother, I appreciate you.
Man, I appreciate you.
You got so many things you want to say. You start to ramble on. I think we were somewhat coherent.
Yeah. Yeah.
Kind of. I didn't.
You and Daniel Carlton are easy to go, man. Let you go. So,
let's see here.
Tell me about the pin that's in your sport jacket.
Oh yeah. So, New York Field Division, the 1 year anniversary of the towers being struck, we were invited down to the site. President Bush came in, the whole thing, and so agents that were there that day were issued these pins, which is the New York Field Division, the Trade Center in there, and then 9/11/01. I've held on to this for 25 years. And so whenever I have an opportunity to be in a forward-facing position like a podcast or something, I wear this to honor the memory.
Amen, man.
Of those folks, because, if you're under 20, you weren't alive. If you're under 25, you weren't alive. Damn, I'm old.
Yeah. I'm right behind you, Bubba. 2
Yeah,
years.
well, I wasn't going to say anything, but it's not to be judgy.
Yeah.
But it's tough, right? Because not to get too political, right? But you have people promoting different things that when I was in New York, people would have laughed at you, right? We went from Rudy Giuliani to Bloomberg. He was a Republican, right? 3-term mayor. But New York was the safest major city in the world because they allowed police to police. Okay. And when you talk about like real violent crime, it's the threat of the greater use of force is really what keeps compliance. The minute you start asking people to do something other than enforcing the law, holding the line, right? Whether it's the Hug a Thug or all these other programs where like, hey, we're going to win hearts and minds. I'm like, you don't understand the mentality of this person. Whatever's occurred to them in their life has made them a predator. And any kindness that you show is going to be perceived as weakness. And I said, there's a small percentage of the population here that is assessing everyone as soon as they meet them to whether it's worth their time to make you a victim. What can they take that you have that they need? And then they balance it out. Can I get away with it? Can I win the fight? Can I take this without any repercussions? And that is their thought process. And they're not balancing, should I invest in a Roth IRA or look for something long term? Mm-hmm. They're going meal to meal, hit to hit, if they're a drug abuser. looking to profit off of somebody else's misery. You can't rationalize with that.
Yeah.
Right? And to be even more sincere, I don't know if you can rehabilitate that. Prisons are designed to punish. We've come up with this narrative like, oh, we're doing job skills and rehabilitation. That's a horrible place to be. You know, and to think you're going to improve somebody's life by sending them in prison, they're going to come out. It's the fear of going back to prison is what motivates them to stay out of trouble. It's not that, man, prison made me a great person.
Yeah.
You know, they either find ways to tame that beast inside of them and channel that energy into good. And there's some remarkable people that have been held accountable, right?
Yeah.
Owned it. Not, I'm a victim of my circumstance, but like really owned it. No, I took the easy way. I wanted the hustle. I wanted this, and I paid for it. And then now look what I do. You know, I'm a positive influence. I do all these things. But there is a segment of population when we talk about that mental health side that everyone is a mark. Everyone's got a little dollar sign over their head. Yeah. You have what I need. Nobody's looking. And then we've decriminalized small theft.
Yeah.
And so what does that do? Nobody stops like, well, I've reached, they said under 500, I won't be held accountable. I'm at 490. You know, nobody falls out of bed and says, I'm going to rob a bank. You know, it's a steady flow. And if you hold somebody accountable early on something and say, hey, there's consequences to your actions. It's not the end of the world. Hell, you're not even 18 yet. You're going to get a reset. Like, let's put some things in your life to set you up for future success. Yeah. I love that model. Not the, hey, you've been victimized. You know, people that you've never met have taken from you, right? Or whatever it is, tax the rich, you know, 1%, whatever the damn slogan is, right? That's radicalized a large portion of the population. Let's get away from that and talk about, hey, this is the most amazing country, this most amazing civilization that's ever existed on this planet. If you put the work in, you can be anything you want to be. Literally. Race, creed, color, religion, doesn't matter. But the converse of that is you can use that as a crutch. Oh, I wasn't born with a silver spoon, so, you know, it didn't work out for me. Mm-hmm. You know, I'm a victim, so I had to rob and steal. Or find another way. Figure it out. I told you before about my wife, about how challenging her upbringing was. Her and her sister, incredibly successful. Middle brother, in and out of jail all of his adult life. He's in his 40s, never been married, never had any kids, and still drug addicted. Everything's an excuse. Only time he reaches out to my wife is when the mortgage needs to be paid. Still lives with his mother. Same set of circumstances.
Yeah.
But uses as an excuse because he wanted to be a jokester, didn't want to take school seriously or anything. And I mean, he's done some of the stupidest armed robberies and strong arm robberies. Picked a police officer's house to do a breaking and entering on in a small town in Tennessee.
On purpose?
Yeah, well, I know he didn't know it was a police officer, but I mean, he's just the unluckiest criminal ever. Big kid, workout kid, and has done real time, real prison time.
Yeah.
West Tennessee Penitentiary, tough place for a young white male to go to jail. Mm-hmm. Just outside of Memphis, and you know, he's out for about a year, and he's in a Gold's Gym, and just everything just kind of hits him at the same time. And they had a Jamba Juice or something inside the Gold's Gym. He goes up and he rips the cash register off the damn desk and walks out. Woman tries to stop him. He pushes her down. So that's how it becomes a strong armed robbery, right? Okay. She gets injured. A couple of dudes from the gym come out there, tackle him, all that stuff. I think he did 3 or 4 years just on that, right? And it's just this comedy of errors. He's a great dude. Like, you can sit down here right now, chop it up with him. He's fantastic, easy to be around. but he's never taken accountability for the mistakes he's made. It's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
You know, and you and I both know those people.
Yes, sir.
You know, you and I have both made decisions in life to where you can go one way or the other, and your life turn out dramatically different.
Thank God.
But
Yeah.
it's true, and I think that's true for everybody, right?
I do want to make sure that we put up a link of Payday and Shield.
Okay.
That way, if anybody wants to donate, anybody wants to get involved.
And that's easy. I've got some stuff in the car, but it's just paydayonshield.org.
You got it.
And that links to the site. It talks about the team that's kind of raised their hand, and their bios are. I mean, it's some amazing dudes. You know that I'm fortunate enough to get to work with.
Yeah.
You know, it's cool.
Well, there's more to come, and I know I've got a couple that you haven't quite met yet, but that'll be coming soon. Thank you.
Thank you, brother. I really appreciate you. I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having the courage to take this chance and do it.
Man.
This is amazing. It's a set of nuts to get out and get it done, man. A lot of people talk it.
Well, I talked about it a long time, and now it's go time. So I'm running on the faith that this is what God wants me to do, number one, and I'm running on the encouragement of people like you and a whole lot of friends that said you should have done this a long time ago.
Well, pick better friends. That's what I'd have to say. But
Thanks for coming, brother.
Proud of you, baby.
Love you. Thank you.